67 hard. Oh, what a hit on Dunham by Switowski.
I think I made him shit himself.
I think he just shit himself.
Only feel the number of people out there being like, what's going on?
First and goal. Mahomes flings it. It's there! Hardman! Jackpot! Kansas City!
And this was the Andy Reid special.
And there you have it. The winning play from the Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 58 against the San Francisco 49ers. I am your host, DJ Anubis, with my co-host, Edgar Allan Poet. So I don't know
what was robbed, and there's no
DJ was robbed, was he?
He was robbed. He's fucking robbed. Real quick, I was waiting to say this until we got on air. I just wanted to tell you, to you and the listeners, how much I've enjoyed doing this and how much it means for me to be able to do this. And we had a great year. This year is a weird season with all the quarterbacks coming and going, and a bunch of really, really talented defenses emerging. Scoring went down for the third year in a row. I think some of that is probably due to the quarterback play, but we got to see and watch some defenses kind of adjust to the new rules, get better at dealing with it and whatnot. It feels like it's slanted towards offense, but not as much. It was a special year, and thanks for doing this with me, brother. It means a lot.
Hey man, no problem. I'm glad to have, you here to do that with me. And, hopefully, down the road, I keep trying to, invite people to come join us and talk, but it's fine. We can do it ourselves. But, for those that we know in this spectrum of, football loving sports, I'll continue to try to reach out if people want to join in sometime and talk some football or even sports in general. You and I cover a lot of other things, but
we've covered soccer. Yeah, we've covered soccer. So
yeah. So I mean, we cover different things, but football's our main bread and butter here. So we enjoy doing this a lot. And again, like last year, we'll be doing a live draft thing come this year as well. So we'll set it up and hopefully
This time with
runs.
breaks.
Right. Yeah, we figured out we're gonna try some different things to cover that aspect. That's a long time to go.
That last hour was that was painful.
We're getting to the point where we need like bottles or bedpans. So we can just...
my muscle atrophy, and I'm pissing. I'm sitting here like, why did I drink so much whiskey? Why? And
yeah, like you try and just enjoy and have some alcohol and stuff and food, and we're just like, oh, I'm so fucked up. I gotta go bathroom here. So anyway, for those that don't know, I am a Denver Bronco fan, as you can see.
Die-hard Denver Bronco fan.
And this gentleman over here is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. So really, we have no real dog in the fight. But for me, as a rival to Kansas City, I do not like them as a rival. I had people tell me, I had a guy tell me on the day of the Super Bowl, who I've known a long time. I used to do radio work with him on the internet years ago. Very cool guy, but he is a Chiefs fan. And he was like, I don't understand like why you hate the Chiefs so much. I'm like, dude, they're my rival. I hate them. I hate them and the Raiders. I hate the Chargers. It's just I share my hate with all of them. But the Chiefs are very successful, so I'm gonna be more expressive about that. So one thing I did say was I'm glad that we don't do this the day after the Super Bowl, because I would have been far more animated about what happened and transpired than I was now, where I can kind of like look back and reflect a little bit better. The Super Bowl, it lived up to the hype. It was very good.
It's the two best teams.
Yeah.
Like the best teams.
But I've got some questions, and there's some other questions I'm going to ask Poet here as we go along to talk about the game, because some interesting things came up that I thought was a bit curious, but it doesn't mean I think the game would have had played out any differently. I think I did pick him in the end to win, mainly based upon experience more than anything. Because Purdy, as much as I like him, he's not a seasoned vet at this point, but
he is now. Like that's
he's been thrown into the fire, and he did a very good job.
I agree. He's caught some strays, and people are saying he didn't play well, and I think sometimes people forget that in the playoffs, you get to be more physical. You're typically playing against defenses. Like sometimes the defense you're playing against isn't great, but it's at least solid. Unless it's the Eagles and they don't believe in tackling. Like it's a different thing. Mahomes has 3 Super Bowl MVPs, but his stats in those games are deceptively bad, especially his passing stats. So it's just I thought Purdy played well.
And I think here's the key thing and all that is we'll probably get more into it, but the defense for the Chiefs is sneaky good. Like you overlook them at just how good they've played the last couple of years. And both times when we go into these seasons, I'm like, I don't know if they're going to be able to withstand the pressure of throughout the regular season. And then there are times when they play in the regular season, you're like, I don't know if they're good enough to go the distance. And then come playoff time, it's like they hit another gear.
Yeah, so they have the talent on that defense. Like if you, I'm not saying anything new, but when they got rid of Hill, it gave them draft picks. Now, not every great defensive player on that team came from those draft picks, but if you look at that defense, Willie Gay is a good linebacker. Bolton's a good linebacker. Chris Jones is obviously very good. Chris Jones is great. Someone's going to go overpay him. Not that he's not great, but because of the age. Karlaftis is good. McDuffie is good. Jarius Sneed is good. And so they have about 4 or 5 guys who are Pro Bowl, All-Pro talent. And most of those guys were played at least at a Pro Bowl level. And if you look at how they kind of built that defense, no one knows the name of their starting safety, but they're not bad, right? And, Willie Gay is he like a Trent Warner? No. But he's quite good and very physically talented, very fast. 2 years ago when they got the Super Bowl, it was like they stole one because the defense had flashes and the offense was really just Kelsey and Juju and then emerging, especially at the end, Pacheco. This year, the defense was fantastic. It kind of got downplayed. I don't think it was quite as good as Baltimore's. Like I've seen Nick Wright and some people make some very specific arguments That's not so much based on like yards per game, although I think they're top 5 in that as well. But like points given up against these teams or whatever, it was
All right.
probably overall a top 5 unit.
Mhm.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, because it would have been foreseeable that they had a good defense this year, especially with all those picks. But this good, it's not like they were set up to get a bajillion sacks because the Chiefs are dropping 35 a game either.
Right.
They had to do some real grunt work at times.
I mean, I think that even Baltimore, they were averaging almost 30 points a game before they ran into Kansas City at home. Like Kansas City held them to 10. Now, some things played out to where they had some points taken off the board, but that doesn't really change the fact that the Chiefs defense really came to play. They
Yeah,
just let them
yeah.
down.
And the Zay Flower thing was this is something I've had to learn as a football fan. Sometimes turnovers feel lucky, like
Mm,
even a forced turnover where it's like I'm diving to make a play and you just happen to be in that spot, not because of what was even predicted to be happening here, and you get a shot at it. But great defenses will give up some yards, give up some plays sometimes to try to force turnovers, because in the long run, it's worth it. You can go too far. I thought the Urlacher Bears did sometimes with their Tampa 2 thing. And it's like, I know their bend don't break, but rattling off 15-yard runs consistently in a bad stretch, not the best. But they got the Zay Flowers fumble. They touchback, I guess technically from the fumble. That blitz by McDuffie, where if not Kansas, if San Francisco converts it, they're running out the clock and they're kicking a field goal to win. And Mahomes 13 seconds or less, you never know how much time he really needs, but it starts getting dicey, and it just felt like Mahomes has this. I feel comfortable saying this because I've used this verbiage before to describe him. I think before it became common. Inevitable. He's one of those guys. And inevitable quarterbacks, they all operate a little bit differently. Brady felt inevitable. Elway felt inevitable. Mahomes felt inevitable. They could all hurt you from the pocket. The latter two could do different things with their legs. There are some guys who are just. It's not so much. I don't really buy into being clutch so much, because a lot of times you'll see a guy like Josh Allen. I put you in position to get the field goal, and then you all shit the bed. Or I get the game-winning touchdown in 13 seconds, then the Chiefs come back and win. I was clutch, and then other people didn't live up to their end of the job. And so some guys are kind of snake bitten. For my money, and I will say this until the end of time, Jim Kelly was a clutch quarterback. It's just everything went against him. But with Mahomes and the way that he was playing, and knowing that he has 4th down, he gets to go full all out. Because with the offense that they have on that team, the talent they have on that offense, he doesn't play the same way he did 3 years ago. He plays a more restrained manner of football. He's not like I almost want to call it game managing, because they really don't have too much room for error, but that has a negative connotation. He's just playing more controlled. He's playing more focused. And then when he gets to throw that to the wind, it's just like, Jesus God, how do you stop it? Elway was the same way. One of my best friend's dads, he was a Seattle fan, is a Seattle fan.
mm,
And Seattle and Denver used to exist in the same division. And he would talk about how it was awful playing against John Elway. And he was like, I don't like saying that I hate John Elway, because I love John Elway. I'm a football fan. If you love football, on some level, you have to love John Elway.
right.
And he's like, but if he had the ball with, a little bit of time to left, and it didn't go that way, it didn't go the Broncos' way, it was usually because it's like dropped pass, blown assignment, something like that. And he's like, and you walked away feeling like, oh, we stole one, even though we were up, even though
Right.
they were the ones that had to do it. And it's with Mahomes. And I've said this too. People want to compare Mahomes to a lot of different guys. To me, he and John Elway are almost identical. Like, he's shorter than John. I think he might be a little bit heavier than John, just because of the era. Because Mahomes
I don't
weighs
know.
Mahomes weighs, like, I just saw something on his combine. His walking around weight is apparently around 225, 220 to 225. They're making fun of him for the shirt off the dad bod thing we were talking about like last episode, and it's like the arm. I think John has a little bit better arm. Mahomes ran a little bit better 40. They're both really
See, I don't
elusive.
know. Mahomes is almost what's the term I want to use? Like he's so much more versatile than John was. But I felt like John was stronger.
John weighed, so here's to your point. John weighed 215. But 215 back then might be bigger than 220 is now. You know what I mean? Because of
Maybe,
how
yeah.
athletes scale.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I see the same type of movement in and out of the pocket. I see the same type of arm strength. I see the same type of, Mahomes has the arm angle stuff, and some of the like almost acrobatics is different.
Now
Whereas
put a comma there for a minute. Like,
yeah,
so one thing I was thinking about watching the Super Bowl, like just kind of popped in my head at the time, was the padding in uniforms are a little bit more streamlined now. So I wonder if that helps give a guy like Patrick
more
the
aerodynamic. Yeah.
yeah, because I think about, like, you remember Ed McCaffrey, so Christian McCaffrey's dad, like when he played, he used to take the padding out of the legs, like he
Yeah,
didn't
because I'm
like it
slow
there.
enough. Yeah, and he would
Right.
cut they're talking about that. No, 100%. And here's the other thing, you just triggered this thought in my head. The helmets are so much bigger now. Some of these
Mhm.
guys, you remember like the memes with Eli, because he looks so goofy with that huge ass helmet on his not
Right.
Peyton Manning sized head. Sometimes I think that like the helmets are so big, and it's for safety reasons. I'm not poo-pooing them, but like maybe that also makes guys look smaller. Now, for somebody who's like a left tackle, obviously, I don't think that exists. But I just see, when I watch Mahomes play and I try to comp him to other guys, I see a little Favre, but what I really see is Elway and Fran Tarkenton. And I know that's an old name.
Right.
Because people are like, oh, Josh Allen's the new Elway. And I don't think that. I think Josh Allen is the much better version of Cam Newton. I think Mahomes is more akin to Elway. That's one of the reasons why I like him so much, and that's probably one of the reasons why, like, you just wish he played in the NFC so you could enjoy him from afar and not have him play on like your most hated team. It's the way I feel about Joe Burrow. I'm like, I want to love you so much, but you kick our ass, and it makes me sad.
Yeah.
And it's a frustration. It's just what it is. So what? Before we get into the questions, this is something I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
Third quarter, Shanahan's getting blown up for throwing the ball. There are analysts who show they're probably throwing the ball because the Chiefs are trying to stop the run first and foremost, based off of formation. Okay,
Right.
I'm going to take them at their word. Okay, that they know more about X's and O's than I do. Okay, that's what it looked like to me when I was watching. But I'm not, I'm a fan. I'm a hardcore fan, but it's not like I'm a fucking coordinator, right? Okay, so Shanahan's response was, "It's hard to run the ball when you go 3 and out," which is factually true. But then maybe if you run the ball, you don't go 3 and out, is kind of the response. Do you take umbrage with the 6 straight passes and the 3 and out in the third quarter?
No. Because I think back to, you remember what you told me about the Lions game, where instead of kicking the field goal to tie it, they went for it on fourth down. You said that they were just being true to who they are.
Yeah.
And even though I still think they should have taken a field goal, the thing about this game, right? So Christian had 22 carries for 80 yards with 8 receptions and 80 yards and a touchdown. So technically speaking, he had a good game.
Yeah, 30
on that
touches.
level. Now I do think early in the game, the first drive, like when he fumbled,
Yeah.
I think that played a mental part of it, because they probably would have scored at least 3 there.
It sure
Now,
it felt like it. It felt
now
like
granted, like they held Chiefs off, like they didn't let them score, but you add in that plus the missed extra point, and again, Purdy had 23 of 38 for 255 and a touchdown, so he had a decent game, and he played within the spectrum that the Chiefs were going to allow him to. It wasn't like they were lighting it up down the field.
And the quote from Spags. So Steve, you've heard me talk about Steve Spagnuolo. He's an example of a guy.
A very underrated DC, by the way.
Yeah. He was an okay head coach. I thought that some of those Giants teams he coached just flat out weren't good. And I thought that he got killed for it a little bit too much, but that's what comes with being the head coach of New York, of a New York team. He talked about how Brock Purdy is so much better than he might have thought and how he operates and runs the system. And to your point about Brock missed 3 big throws. Okay. One throw was early in the game, and it was a jump ball for his wideout. I can't remember if it was either Ayuk or Debo. I think it was Ayuk. And he was matched up against, it was either Snead or McDuffie. And those guys are money. And he bats it away. And it's like, that's just football. Like, that's a 50-50. The Chris Jones one at the end of the game in overtime when Jawan Jennings was open, I'm like, this is what gets me frustrated. People are like, well, Mahomes could have made that throw. Josh Allen could have made that throw. And it's like, yeah, they could have. But you know what? They're also not perfect. And here's the other thing. It's easy to armchair quarterback it when you're not the one that has Chris Jones barreling down at you, like hike, and then Chris Jones is in your face. It's like he took a step back and threw the ball away. And I was watching with my buddy who's a Niners fan. I said, people are going to say a lot of different things about that play, and it's all going to change based on the outcome of this game. But not taking a sack there and getting rid of the ball there was big boy quarterback. And sometimes big boy quarterback doesn't end with a heroic touchdown or a highlight play. Sometimes it just ends with, I didn't turn the ball over, and yeah, I might have shit myself, but you know what? I'm doing okay. And the other one that he missed, this was probably the worst moment. He had a guy streaking down the middle of the end zone. He just overthrew him. I've seen everybody do that. I'm not excusing that. I killed Garoppolo for doing that in the first Super Bowl between the two teams. But also, Brock Purdy played a whole lot better than Garoppolo did.
Yeah, and I think we can agree that Purdy played way better than Garoppolo. Like Purdy, no matter if you think he's going to be a huge Hall of Famer or not, I think he has a better ceiling than Garoppolo.
Oh, gee, the mobility alone.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because Mahomes, 34, 46, 333 passing, 2 TDs and an interception. Pacheco was held in check, 18 carries for 59 yards. They shut him down. Kelsey did have 9 catches for 93, but most of that came in the second half. Now there's 2 things that I think were the problem for the Niners in this game. The first one, as good as Purdy played, he didn't really use his mobility enough. Mahomes was 9 rushes, 66 yards.
Yeah.
That's where he kills you. Because especially on that 4th and 1, I told Missy at the time, she goes, what do you think they're going to call here? I said, they're going to have Mahomes run it.
Yep. And they have not. Did you know that they have not, since that injury, the year that they lost to Tampa, where he jacked up his knee, it's like the dislocated knee thing, they've not called a quarterback designed run. So that's been 3 or 4 years.
But did you notice the run? So what happened was and this is, again, the second part of why I think the Niners failed, and this is why I kind of made my thumbnail the way I did, is Shanahan is known to be a very creative offensive guy.
Yes, he is.
He did not get that creative in this game, and
only with that touchdown to McCaffrey. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, right. That was the only one. But the design 4th and 1 where they had, I don't know who the receiver was, came rolling in front of Mahomes, and then they ran out and they had Kelsey in front of him.
Yeah.
And I knew that was just going to be like a diversion, because with Kelsey going out there, they were going to follow Kelsey, and he ran for like 20 yards. So that just shows you how great Andy Reid is.
Brother, I agree so much, because I was watching clips of this, and they showed a Niner on the sideline. I think it was either Trent. I think it was Trent Williams, and they panned to him, and he says, that Mahomes is going to run it, and he knows he's going to do it. And then there's a play breakdown. Andy Reid's diabolical, so it's an option. Because when he goes out with, so Bosa crashes down, and so Mahomes is like, okay, you crash down, so I'm going to go here. If you don't crash down and you come at me, I throw it to Kelsey. He just has to fall forward, and then that's a first down. Although the spotting in that game, by the way, was horrible. I want to get to that.
I think a lot of people talk about that.
It was egregious. It was a well officiated game, but the spotting was terrible.
Well, let's pause there for a minute, real quickly.
Can I finish real quick about that play? I just had one last thing.
Yeah.
So when he crashes out and Kelsey can catch it, and then the second you see Kelsey, because those two have like brain meld, he sees what Mahomes is doing, and he just goes. He's not Kelsey's a big boy, but he's not known as a great blocker. But he barrels into the defender, and then Mahomes could have moonwalked for the first down. And you're exactly right, because the Chiefs are going to do, like, Andy Reid is one of those guys who he thinks about every single last scenario. And then, he's like, I hate having Mahomes do a designed run because it really hurt us. But it is the Super Bowl, and in this situation or this situation, it lines up perfectly. And I know why you did your thumbnail that way, because it's like, you, Shanahan, are brilliant, but I'm the professor. It's like, I give you the doctorate. Like,
right. And see, Purdy didn't have what I felt was enough of those runs to try to like keep drives going.
Yeah.
And it's not really so much his fault as it wasn't just Shanahan's to try to give them a chance to do it. Now in that case with the Chiefs, they're down by 3 and the clock's ticking. So you're not going to risk it throwing it to Kelsey. Like, you can just say to yourself, sure, the option's there. And it's not that they couldn't have picked it up with Kelsey getting a pass from Mahomes, but I knew that the safest way to pick up that first down was to have Mahomes run it.
And you're not going to take the ball out of that man's hands.
Right.
Because if he knows, if he has to do, it's like the fail safe is, oh, fuck, let me do something crazy, like the left-handed pass or whatever, right? And so he can make a random play, he can run it, he can throw it if it's correct. The thing that he does, it reminds me of McNabb, and Elway and Steve Young did it too, is sometimes they'll be running towards, especially when the line of scrimmage is close to the line of the game, and they're running and then they just stop. And then they fake to throw, and you feel so bad for that poor linebacker, because it's like, if I jump, he's running by me. If I try to tackle him, he might juke me. He has all, I don't know what's happening behind me. I'm staring at him. It's horrible. And you just have to hope that he screws up. And to your point about Brock Purdy not doing some of those things, and he did that in the championship game. We know he can do it.
Yeah.
Shanahan has moved away from the bootlegs. Used to see when he coached with his dad in Washington, those RG3 bootlegs were backbreaking. They were like the Jake Plummer bootlegs were brutal in Denver. The RG3 bootlegs were just
with that shit all the time.
And it's like, guess what? I'm bootlegging, and there's really like 3 to 5 main routes that we can run out of that, depending on how many guys are there. And they're all crappy. And then the worst part about it is this uber talented fuck with the ball, whether it's a Plummer, whether it's an RG3, whether it's an Elway, can make you pay with the legs. They can fake you out. And in that moment, you're not playing football. The quarterback is a point guard, and it's a fast break. And you're just sitting there going, please don't screw me. Please don't screw me. Please don't screw me. I want Brock Purdy. I don't want, look, I'm not saying that he's Michael Vick, but I think we can agree that there are things to unlock there with that mobility, because he also avoided, look, that right side of the Niners line is not great. And we've seen him avoid pressure, whether he's shuffling about in the pocket or stepping up or breaking off for a run. There's more. I'm not saying that Purdy is going to become a top 3 elite quarterback, but I know even if the weapons start to go away, because salary cap is the inevitable ruler of football, just because your stats go down doesn't mean that you don't get better. And I'm not saying that he can unlock and go up a bunch of levels, but I am saying that as a facet of his game, there's no reason to think you can't do more with that. And I think that Shanahan did his offense a disservice. Now, there's a lot of criticisms of Shanahan that I just don't agree with. And I know we're going to spend a lot of time about him. What we've talked about thus far, I think, is fair.
Yeah, and I think the good comparison there is, like, so before they kick the field goal up to go up 19-16, they're facing a 3rd and 4, like around the Chiefs 30. Now, this is a point where, if I'm me, I'm like, I want to keep the ball. I want to keep the clock rolling, because the less time I give the guy on the other side, this guy, I don't want him to be coming back and like
perfect portrait, by the way, spitting
right. And so that was where something like you brought up about the bootlegs, like that would have been a perfect opportunity. Even if it doesn't work, you can still give Purdy a chance to get
'Cause
that
it's so
first down.
it's so easy on a bootleg. If it goes sideways, it's so easy to throw the ball away. Because like
Yep.
look where you are. Now, I will say, and this happens like once or twice a season, and I feel always horrible for the quarterback when it happens. When you go on that bootleg and and your corner just whiffs, and then
Yeah.
and a random, to borrow a Pokemon phrase, a random linebacker or blitzing corner appears, and you're like, you're not supposed to be. Oh God! Like you just get blown up. I watched that happen to I think it was Romo one time against the Giants, and the poor some bitch, like he just rolls out and just and
Yeah. Yeah. It could
different
end badly,
concussion.
but
Yeah, different, but that's so rare, and that could also
right.
happen on anything. It's like that Lamar injury 3 years ago where he hurts his knee in the pocket, and it's just off a normal tackle. I thought it just twisted. It's like it's football, like Greenlaw that game. Like
Oh
I know
yeah.
that he had the Achilles injury, or like his Achilles had been banged up, is what one of my buddies told me. But no one expected it to tear when he's jumping up and ready to go onto the field. That was horrible.
Yeah. That just sucks.
And Greenlaw is underrated. That guy is a baller.
Yes, he
Um,
is.
and
He
it
had a
just
great year for him.
he did, and I feel so bad for him because Achilles is rough, and then because it's so deep into the season that I don't know when he comes back next year. You know,
And I just think that overall that, that the fact that Shannon got so conservative in this particular game, just, it just shows you like once you get to this big game, you're kind of like leaving everything on the field. And I think that aside from that touchdown pass from Jennings,
and the
he
fourth
really,
down call to Kittle, like those are the only
right,
two moments.
right.
I
Like, it's like you got to kind of like, especially when the game's online, like you got to know that if you don't kill more clock or get a touchdown in that final moments, that Mahomes and Reed are going to come back with a
it's
vengeance. Like you
you're
just
you're
can't.
yeah, you're banking on the Chiefs screwing up more than you are on your ability to stop them. And it's one of the reasons why I hated the firing of their coordinator. Last year or 2 years ago now technically, they gave up like 13.9 points per game, and they were the best defense by far in the league. They were damn near historic. Um, and this year they took a step back. And they're missing I got his name escapes me. He's the coach of the Texans now, D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah.
They're missing D'Amico Ryans and Steve Wilkes. They're up and down, up and down. But this is my response to that. One, you still had a really good defense. Two, it's his first time as a coordinator. You have to grade on a curve somewhat. Three, they held the Chiefs to less than 20 points in 4 quarters of play.
Right.
So it's not like the man's defense went out there and shit the bed. Now I understand when Shanahan called that timeout because he hated going cover 0 against Mahomes. I understood that cover 0 against Mahomes is a death sentence. I mean, you're just doing that if you're like you're absolutely nothing else has worked and you're just hoping that someone can win a one-on-one matchup. You get a little lucky, disrupted or whatever. I understood that timeout, but I also understood why Steve Wilkes was calling it because he's like, well, I tried prevent. I tried coverage. I played man. I've done all of this, and it's worked, and now it's stopped working. I want my guys to make a play, and you can fire him for that if that's what you want to do. Now, he said he was going to change the scheme, so if they change the scheme a lot, it makes a little bit more sense. But Steve Spagnuolo said, hey, if you convert this, you run out the clock, you probably kick a field goal, and you win, like a 30-yard field goal and win. So fuck you, I'm going to blitz a corner. He blitzed a corner in the Super Bowl. He blitzed his best corner in the Super Bowl. He was covering either Debo or Ayuk because that's where they thought the ball was going to go based on down and distance. And they said, you know what? If you're going to throw it there, I'll just send the guy at you. And he barely deflected that ball too. And I feel bad for Wilkes. I really do. He's been linked to Pittsburgh. I would love if we picked him up as an assistant coach. I didn't feel like he deserved to be fired. And I feel like that's just Shanahan kind of reaching a little bit, trying to find, to find his way, so to speak. And man, This is probably the thing that Shanahan did Super Bowl and post Super Bowl that bothered me the most. But you said you had questions. You had any other questions?
Well, the first one, because you talked about the officiating, which was very good in the game, but I found this very interesting because I did not even know this. Apparently, this was the third straight Super Bowl in which the offensive line for the Chiefs was never called for offensive holding.
And depending on which side you're on things, how you feel.
In 2023, they were one of the highest in penalties in that regard.
They let them play. So last year, they missed some holding calls that were bad. This year, or when I say year, I mean Super Bowl. They didn't call, unless it was an egregious hold, they didn't call it, like that hold by Trent at the beginning of the game where it was just like shoulder pad separation type stuff. That's all they're going to do. And so I saw some Chiefs fans on Twitter, for instance, or X or whatever it's called, say, we're talking about these holds because the Niners lost, and we're not talking about these holds because the Chiefs won. There's plays of Chris Jones being held. You've heard me complain all year about TJ Watt and other elite pass rushers getting held. I think that it was a story because the owner of the Niners and Bosa complained about it going into the game, and so people were looking for it. But on the other hand, I did see one guy basically just hug the shit out of Joey, or Nick Bosa, like he missed him. And I think that was on a pivotal play towards the end of the game. I can't remember which one. So I understand being raw about it, but like it's what I would tell the Niner fans is the holding isn't why you lost. But
do you think that though, when you they led the league this year and then last year they were fifth. Yeah. So do you think though that if they're calling it so consistently throughout the season that they should continue to do that?
Yes, absolutely. You know me, I'm one of those rare guys. I want it called the same way at the start of the game as the end of the game. I want it called the same way at the start of the season, at the end of the season. And I understand.
I agree with you though. It's not going to change the outcome of this game.
And I'll also tell you this. Now I understand that like this all happens in the real world. So 2 years ago, you remember when they were calling taunting penalties all the time? Okay. Yeah. Well, that's an emphasis. So they're going to crack down on that and get a little silly. Like I remember the Bears got screwed on a call against my Steelers where their linebacker got a huge tackle for loss. It might have been a sack. He's standing at like the 50-yard line, maybe like a little bit behind it. And he was the dude, you probably remember him. He does like the karate pose and the kick. Well, the kick ends. Yeah. He's staring right at the Steelers sideline, and they flag him for it. And I was like, well, that's stupid. But, so I understand that. But, yeah, no, they're holding. They're absolutely holding. And the ref's response would be there's holding on every play. There's probably egregious holding on every play. What do you want us to do? And if it becomes they complain and then we enforce it type thing, then, that's how the NBA works. And people hate NBA officiating. It turns into like a Phil Jackson, Pat Riley, almost trying to condition the refs to see it. None of that excuses the holds that they got away with. But I do think it's kind of like when people say the Chiefs get favoritism in reffing. Well, we saw it in the Packers game. Absolutely fucking not. They had several controversial calls. I'm not even talking about the offsides with Tony or whatever wide receiver it was this year. I could pull them up that absolutely went away with them. It's just that when you have the televised game and everything's scrutinized, especially if you have partisan feelings towards it, you're going to look out for that. Like, see, that happened to me. That happened to us. That happened to us. Like, I can tell you all the time about TJ Watt getting held, but I might not remember Hendrickson for the Bengals being held as much. You know what I mean? I might not just, that's football. I might view it a little differently. And yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to lie to you. You've heard me talk about it. The weak link on that offense, other than the wide receivers, is the tackles. Yeah. Their tackles are not great. At all. They took the tackle from the Dolphins that left. And last year, Tua, we were like, oh God, is he going to finish the season? Like, he did not have good protection, and you took one of their tackles. You took a super penalized guy. What is his name? Taylor, Mr. False Start. He's not okay. I can't say that he sucks. He is a talented guy who, but for the penalties, would be above average, but because of the penalties is probably average or slightly below. And it works because you have Mahomes, and then the interior of that offensive line with Humphrey and Thuney is just so great. What they figured out is Mahomes' mobility and playmaking. He operates differently than a lot of quarterbacks. He needs less help on the tackles. He needs more help interior, because if you can get to the quarterback up the gut, they're cooked. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter who they are, especially consistently.
Right. All right. So 2-part question.
Okay.
First one is, where does this place Mahomes on the spectrum of best ever?
Okay.
And the second part, just so you know, because I want your top 5 greatest quarterbacks of all time, so you can just add them in together.
Sure. Okay. So I'll do the top 5. I'll do the top 5. I'll do my top 5 before Mahomes, in no order. Brady has to be in there, even though it pains me. Manning is in there. Marino is in there. I had Rodgers in there for such a long time, but the end of his career in Green Bay was so disappointing, not just from production standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint, that I think he falls out. Marino's in there and Elway's in there. So here, let me type that into chat just so. Elway, Marino, Brady.
But you said there's no order there, right?
It's Elway, Marino, Brady, Manning. Rodgers falls out. And so I would probably do Elway, Marino, Brady, Manning, and then Mahomes. And so where it puts him is, it just depends on how far out you had him. He's in a lot of people's top 5s already, and they were putting him before this 4 or 5. The argument's simple: 2 Super Bowls, some MVPs, and played the game at the highest level you've ever seen almost immediately, jaw-dropping highlights, and then he's learned to become a very smart quarterback as well, right? And so where you put him now is going to depend. Some people, like I was arguing with people online today, there's some people who think Bradshaw and Aikman are better than him. Bart Starr is better than him, and it's a rings analysis. Like one guy said, he can't.
It's not just that, but I think it also, because like I'm kind of guilty of this myself, is in terms of era. So like,
yeah,
you and I have talked about it before, like whether or not Mahomes would be able to survive in the old era because of how much more physical it was. But we also recognize that most players today are faster and stronger than back then. So there's like this balance. Yeah.
If he was 225, if we take him as he is now, and he's 225, if you put him in the 70s, that's as much as, like, actually here, like, let me see, how much did Jack Lambert weigh? Jack Lambert weighed 220 pounds. He was 6'4". Jack Lambert was huge, and he horrified people. So he weighs as much or more than the most dominant linebacker, the scariest guy of that era. So if we do the thing where we scale him down, that's interesting. Just like if you do the thing where when people are like, Jim Brown couldn't play today, and I go like, well, he was a great track star and he was huge back then. He's bigger than some of the guys who are quite good today. Yeah. But if he was physically now what he was back then he absolutely would if he scaled that way, then he absolutely would. And then some guys, it just doesn't matter. Like Bo Jackson is Bo Jackson. You know what I mean? Like that guy can play. There's never going to be a time. Like there are some people who made, it was a silly argument, Randy Moss couldn't have played in the 70s. The fuck do you mean? Nobody is catching that man. No one is jamming him. You go to jam him and he runs by you. Like it's just it's an unserious argument. So to take it back to Mahomes, I respect the era. I think sometimes there's some sports like basketball where we big up our favorite eras a little too much. There are some sports like football where we act like sometimes we want to think that in the 70s they never threw a forward pass and they only ran the ball. And like you look at Pittsburgh and it's like, well, Franco Harris ran a great 40. He was a running back. And Stallworth and Swan are Hall of Fame wide receivers. The Steelers ran the ball a lot, but they also threw it a lot too. So if my top 5 would be Elway, Marino, Brady, Manning, and Mahomes. I don't think, for Marino, he's the best pure pocket passer I've seen. If his interceptions would be way down today because of the era. His arm is still golden. The release is still golden. He was a tough son of a bitch. Elway, we've sung Elway. We know what Elway is on this podcast, and our listeners know what Elway is. Brady has just recently retired. We all know what he is. Same thing for Manning. We all know what he is. Those are revered. So Mahomes is in the top 5. So it just depends on where you had him. I had him, for me, the way that I look at it is a 3-part analysis. Have you proven that you can win? When you get to 2 Super Bowls, every quarterback with 2 rings as a starter has made the Hall of Fame. Okay. So when you get to 3, you are now approved. That is more than a career's worth of winning for a Hall of Fame starter. Okay. Then I look at your stats, and I care about your stats in the context of your era. Okay. That absolutely you have to do. It's like when people are like, well, Elway's yardage is really good, but what about the touchdowns and the interceptions? And I'm like, what about everybody else's touchdowns and interceptions? It's if you think that he's throwing 20 touchdowns and 13 picks if he played in a modern offense in 2024, then to me, and I'm not being insulting, I just think that you just don't know a lot about Elway, and that's okay. YouTube is there. NFL Films is there. Like there's nothing wrong with, and if that's still your opinion afterwards and you have a basis for it, then we can have a conversation about it.
Right.
To me, so have you proven that you're a winner? Check. Okay. Do you have just the stats? Do you have the MVPs? Are you all pro caliber talent? So your stats and then like your talent, your measurables. Check. And then it's just eye test. How good are you? And so to me, Mahomes is my GOAT. And the way that I look at it is, I think 3 rings is enough to put you in the GOAT conversation. The stats are what they are. The MVPs and the Super Bowl MVPs and all of that stuff are what they are. And I just look at him and I go, I don't think I've ever seen anybody play the game better. And he's been one of the greatest quarterbacks I've ever seen now for 5 years. So to me, he's the GOAT. Now that's picking up some steam. Most people are saying he's on the path to the GOAT. A lot of people, I think it's fair to put him in the top 5. That's what I will say, that if somebody doesn't have them in their top 5, I can respect some of the criteria that might exist that would keep him out. I also understand the sentiment of I don't evaluate players for GOATness until their career is over. I also understand. For a basketball rep, I think it's fair. LeBron James has played for damn near a quarter century. Like it's different on a guy on year 20 versus a Mahomes who's on year 7 or 6 as a starter. I get that as well.
I did rank my top 5. I did rank my top 5.
You did. Did you have an order for it? If you have an order for it,
I do have an order for it. Like that's why I asked you.
Okay.
But this is my order.
Then I'll go. Okay, give me your order. Brady's at 1.
Number 5, Joe Montana.
Okay.
Number 4, Peyton Manning.
Oh, it's so low for the sheriff.
Number 3, Tom Brady.
Okay.
Number 2, Patrick Mahomes.
You got Mahomes at 2.
And number 1, John Elway. And I will say this, because I am a huge Elway guy.
Yeah.
If Mahomes, like, he's still got a lot of football left.
He's 28.
So whatever happens with him, that guy has proven to me that he's legit. Like, I kind of knew he was legit. I liked Patrick as a player, as a person. Hate the fucking Chiefs, but this is almost like karma coming back around on Bronco fans because of how long Elway tormented the Chiefs for years.
He was dead.
Unfortunately, the minute that Patrick and the Chiefs won a Super Bowl, it kind of crushed that whole like shit that I got to hold over their heads for so many years and not getting back to the Super Bowl. But yeah, he's the fucking real deal. And like the only reason why he's probably not number 1 right now is that he's proven he can win without your superstar wide receivers and running backs. Even though you could argue Pacheco's very good, but it's still early in Pacheco's career too. But
he is getting for
a long time. Elway did the same thing. Even in the Super Bowl losses, he played with like very mediocre receivers and running backs.
He played. Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Sure.
So when you look at those Broncos Super Bowl teams, I wonder if you see it the same way that I do. Where I look at them like as a unit, like the wide receivers, that the unit as a whole, solid, like it's a good, strong unit. But you both know that what wins games sometimes is just the studs. It's
Yeah.
the Jerry Rice, or I don't really like him, but the Michael Irvin, it's just like sometimes I'm better than you and the ball's going here type of thing. Is
Right.
that how
And that's
you
what
viewed it?
it was. Yeah. And the thing is, like, John had Shannon, which is one of the best tight ends ever, but then Patrick has Kelsey, who's one of the best tight ends ever, who'll
It's
probably
ever.
be the
And
best tight end ever.
their play
But this
styles
is
kinda
one thing where Patrick may end up passing John, like, as much as it pains me to say it, but it could happen because Patrick is still playing with, like, I can't really name any, like, receiver he's had outside of Kelsey that's, like, gonna be a Hall of Famer. Like, there isn't anybody that comes to mind, and there isn't a running back. It's not like he had Priest Holmes or somebody like this back there. So John, when we finally got the wins, had to have Terrell Davis. We had to have, like, an all-star defense with, like,
he
Neil
got it on
Smith.
he got it on the back end, where for
Right.
all those years he was like
And yeah,
carrying.
and that's where John gets kind of like this favor right now, because he actually had to kind of carry these teams, which is important. It's why I take the mentality of what a quarterback can do to uplift the rest of the team
Are you a
on his
force
back. And
multiplier?
Mahomes can do that. Mahomes can say, look, we're not giving up. We're going to come back in this game. And he's got that ability to uh, motivate the rest of the players to step up themselves to play at a higher level. That's what made Manning so great. That's what made Brady so great. It's why I kind of like take issue with, again, not to nitpick Lamar, but he's got to be able to have that factor. He's got to be able to say, look,
Yeah, he
we
makes the
got to
running
step it up
backs
here.
better.
Right. Now he's good and he may still get his Super Bowls, but those are things that Lamar is going to have to improve upon. Obviously he tried, this
and
time. I didn't really hold Lamar at fault for what happened with the Chiefs.
No, because here's one of the things I love about you is that you're fair,
Yeah.
and so when I know that we had talked off camera about that game, and Lamar did hit some nice throws and he did make some
Yeah.
plays, and on that
I mean,
drive
it's
where he
not
threw
his
that.
fault that Flowers fumbled. I mean, that would
No,
have changed
he
the
or
game
that
entirely.
stupid taunting or all those
Yeah.
personal fouls.
Right.
The On that drive where he ended up throwing that triple coverage pick, he made several really nice plays, and he was kind of doing what you now. It's not for him. I don't think it's a question of can he do it. It's can you do it enough.
Right.
I liken it to somebody is good at math. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, so they really like math, they're really talented at it, and they get out of high school, they've done all the AP, all the really hard math classes, and they go off to university, and then all of a sudden there's some chubby nerd with a chalkboard the size of 3 rooms, and he's doing calculus in his head for fun because he's the professor, and this is the motherfucker who does like fusion or whatever nerd shit that those guys do, and it's like, you're good at math. This is true. You're good enough to be here. Can you scale into that? Into that guy? And for John, one of the things that I've always argued on his behalf is, and I watched him, I was born in 87. I watched his Super Bowls in the 90s. I've gone back and I've watched, now being on the Broncos board, there's all kinds of John Elway content that I've gotten to absorb. And not all of it was just, warm, fuzzy, Homer stuff. When the people criticize him and say, well, he won at the end, and well, he had Terrell Davis and that coach and that scheme and those wide receivers. And I go, well, hold on a second. You have a general manager, and their job is to build a good team. It's not to get 4 good players and go, God, I hope it works out. Because even the Panthers can do that. Like, even the fucking
Right.
Panthers can do that because there's just so much talent in the NFL. Okay. So if you look at that, like, none of those offensive linemen other than Nalen were considered studs. A lot of those guys were cast-offs, or they were considered like Schlereth. He was good, but he's older now, right? That was kind of like the take on Stink. So yeah, he has a great system, undoubtedly. Okay, and people were like, "It's cheating, it's cheap." No, it's within the rules, and the rules are there to be exploited. And I say that as a guy who went to law school and did a couple trials.
Well,
Okay,
I was thinking about that the other day too, because the zone blocking scheme, a lot of people complain about how dangerous it was, which is why they eventually took it out. But
that
at
You
the
can
time
still
that Denver
do it.
was using it, it was legal. They didn't.
Okay,
It wasn't
yeah,
like they
but
were
you know
breaking
what?
any rules.
But let's real quick on that. It was also legal for like, oh, I'm a cornerback and I got burned because I suck, but you're in the air. I'm going to put my shoulder just under your chin and I covered you. And it's like, that's
Yeah.
not an art mark of great coverage. It's like you got burned and you hit a man in the back of his head. You're really good at coverage, right? It goes, one of the reasons my dad liked the Broncos so much is he loved defense. Like Atwater was his guy. Atwater was one of his guys because he didn't just blow people up. He could actually cover. He just preferred blowing people up. But he's like,
Yeah.
at a certain point, the offense should be able to hit back too. And that's what the zone blocking was. Now you can still run the zone block. I'm diving too deep into it, but like Shannon Sharp was a Hall of Famer. Rod Smith was a borderline guy. He didn't get in. McCaffrey was good, but he wasn't a Hall of Famer. Okay, so I have now given you Nalen should be a Hall of Famer and Sharp should be a Hall of Famer. Okay, I'm not downplaying those guys, and there's a good scheme, but I'm a Peyton Manning guy. And he got at one point in time, his offense was Dallas Clark, who I do think was overrated, but he was good. Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison. So that's two guys. Like Wayne is a borderline Hall of Fame guy. I don't know if he'll get in. Marvin Harrison was obviously a first ballot guy, and Dallas Clark was a top 5 tight end most years. Now he made all those guys better. Okay. But then if you remove some guys who are just supreme first round talents, Austin Collie, Gonzalez before the concussions ended his career prematurely, Pierre Garcon, those guys were above average to good, and he elevated them. And so when people can say, well, John had it served up to him so much, I'm like, okay, but maybe it's just poetry. Maybe the guy who had to carry everything, at least offensively, finally looks around and he's like, I'm not surrounded by scrubs. Oh, thank God.
I mean, look, John has always been very appreciative of the players that play with him, but he was honest about, when he went into that Super Bowl with the Packers, he's like, yeah, I didn't have to feel like I had to do it all myself. I had other people around me, and Terrell was a huge part of that. So it's like,
well, and it's to his point too. He's also a guy who he was there to make some play with his legs and be crafty and stuff like that. But he was also at that point, he made some big boy plays, but he was also just kind of going like, okay, you're probably going to do this, and this is our play call, so I don't have to do this by myself. I'm just going to throw it there, and whoa, first down, get fucked. Like it, and rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. You can't bash that and then scream Brady. I'm not talking about you, but scream Brady 7 rings, and then ignore the fact that I say 2. Some people say 3 rings were game manager rings. I say 2 rings are game manager rings. I think that's a fair reading of history. Okay. Because you trade for Corey Dillon and you have a running game, maybe I'm mixing up rings, but by the 3rd ring, I think he had already led the league. Yeah, well, when you have 7, that's a lot. You know what I mean? It's like Jordan. Like I can't tell you. It's hard to remember who Jordan beat. In succession. It's like I just know he has 6 fucking rings.
It's true. He brings this up a lot when he's arguing Brady with me.
It's
said, yeah, but Eli beat him twice. I was like, yeah, he reminds me of this all the time.
Yeah, well, you know what? I need to do it when we talk about Brady beating Mahomes. It's a very strong rebuttal. It's also kind of funny.
Well, you saw, I did put Mahomes on top of Brady now, so now people can get off my dick.
I know, and it's. Now here's the thing too. I will say this: if Andy Reid, he said he's coming back, but if Reid left and Kelsey retired, and then Mahomes was terrible, I would not look as smart.
I'd revel in it, but the reality is that we know that even some of the best quarterbacks have some shitty teams. I mean, Brady, despite still having success in New England, he was pissed off all the time because Belichick wouldn't get him that shit
out of spite. And they're doing that 10-part documentary series. I've seen the advertisements for, and there's a quote. It's a sexy quote. That's why they're using it for ads. Is by the end, I just knew I wasn't coming back. And if you remember this, when Tom Brady went to Tampa, I said, Super Bowl contender, probably the favorite to do it, and I don't blame him for leaving. And then when people, and it's true, because here's the thing about Tom, a lot of people like to go, ha ha, he lost to Manning, especially the year that he broke the record. And I'm like, I don't think it's like I was happy because like I was a Manning guy. But what happened to him was he played a clean game. It's just his offensive line could not block all those pass rushers. And what happened to Manning and some of those other guys who got beat up by the Patriots is what happened to him. It didn't make him any less great, but he had Moss and Welker and Stallworth. And that was the first time he ever got to walk onto the field and not be in the same situation that John was offensively, where it's like, my guys are solid. They're professional receivers. They're solid players. However, there is a difference. Deion Branch was pretty good. There's a difference between Deion Branch and Randy Moss. There is a difference between Juju Smith-Schuster and Antonio Brown. It's not to take away, or like Anquan Bolden was an excellent player. He was a top 10 wideout for a chunk of his career. He was not as good as Larry Fitzgerald. Very few players in the history of the game were as good as Larry, and let alone wideouts. And so for Tom, you get a taste of having like, yeah, I'm about to chuck the ball now. We're going to play some modern ball now.
Big
and
boy
then you
football.
slowly phase that out. And he is like, I need a deep threat. And you traded for Mohamed Sanu. And Mohamed was a good player, but he was a possession guy. And he was like, I have Edelman and Mohamed Sanu and the corpse of Gronk at this point. And I had Brandon Cooks, and then we traded him because how dare we have somebody who runs a 4.40. And at the end, he was just given crap in that game against Tennessee. When he threw that rage quit pick where he just chucked it 50 yards down the field and it got picked, I was like, yeah, Tom's leaving. Tom's leaving. And he went to Tampa, and Tampa had everything but the quarterback. And what they didn't have, like they needed the tight end, they got Gronk. They needed the third wideout, they got Brown. They needed some offensive linemen, they drafted some of those guys. They had a great roster, they just didn't have the quarterback. And then Tom, he struggled a little bit. He had to get used to the differences in the system. They scaled it back a little bit to what he was more comfortable with. And then he won a fucking Super Bowl. And so I don't like the critique of, I like knowing that a guy can carry, but I don't like the critique of, well, his players are good. It's like the Brock Purdy thing. Well, his players are good and they're supposed to be. Well,
and I say that immediately. I'm like, okay, go look at Joe Montana's roster and get back to me. Because like, or Steve Young. Steve Young had like a loaded team.
You're supposed to make them better, and they're supposed to make you better because it's a team sport. And
quick question.
Yes.
Now this applies to all like Hall of Fame quarterbacks, because I know I went back and looked briefly on Tom Brady's opponents and John Elway's, etc. Does it change anything in your mind? It probably won't, and it doesn't really change mine, that 3 of the 4 quarterbacks that Mahomes has faced as far as like Super Bowl challenges were either mediocre or very young quarterbacks.
Yes, actually it does a little bit. And I because I just have to call it as fair as I can. So if you go to the first one,
right,
Jimmy Garoppolo, right. I've ranted about Jimmy G. You know how I feel about Jimmy G. Anyone who's ever talked to me about football, yeah. Okay. So he's a game manager who is a game manager, but at least once a game, he's going to do something very silly that could lose the game for you. Okay.
Right.
And so he's just not, at best, he's the 16th best guy. At worst, he's like the 20th best guy or worst guy. Okay. Maybe there's a year he's a little bit better. I don't fucking care. And so the challenge for that was playing against that loaded defense that more unpredictable. Honestly, it felt like that offense was more unpredictable, even though they weren't as loaded. And so it's like you beat Jimmy G. The one last year with Jalen Hurts, he was young, and I think he's going to bounce back and be good. But let's say he doesn't. Then it's a 50-50, because on one hand, it's like, let's say he just doesn't pan out, or he just goes from being special to like good or whatever. Then you didn't beat a dude. Yeah, you didn't beat a dude, but he was a dude that year.
Right.
So that one is a little, you can kind of play it by ear. I am consistently more of a how were you that day, because I don't make fun of Brady for losing to Nick Foles, because that day Nick Foles was Jesus.
Right.
Most other days he was ass, but that day Nick Foles, he's one of those guys when he's expected to do well, he's not going to do well, and there's no pressure on him. He's going to light it up, and everyone thought the Eagles were going to get fucking murdered. So that's what it
Right.
was. And then this year you have Brock Purdy, who it's hard to evaluate. Like this year, I think Brock Purdy was somewhere between the 5th to 10th best guy, but it's weird because there's a lot of quarterback injuries. And
Right.
then you can argue how well he played, and then we don't know what he's going to do. So this one I'm going to say was overall solid competition. Yeah, it would have been. Now, let's be fair. If he had beaten Tom Brady in the Super Bowl, we wouldn't be having this conversation because
Exactly.
you beat the GOAT and then you beat. So it is what now. Brady, it's kind of the same thing. He beat Kurt Warner, Super Bowl I, but he threw one touchdown past that whole Super Bowl run, like literally. But he did beat Kurt Warner. How do you gauge that? He beat Jake Delhomme, and for a while, Jake Delhomme was pretty good. But when he fell off, he fell off.
I think you can still put Jake in like the Nick Foles,
it
flash in
depends
the
on
pan type thing. So,
but he was good that year, and he was good a couple of years after. So it's. But then Tom could also say, okay, well, you know what? I also beat Peyton in the conference championship game. What you go, Peyton? You go beat Peyton Manning. Beating Peyton Manning when he's not playing Tom Brady is and towards the end of his career, it became very hard again. It's like, he lost to the Saints in the Super Bowl. Well, it took an onside kick and Porter gambling and not dropping an interception and a pick six. It took a lot to beat him. Ask the Bears about how much fun it is to play against Peyton. Well, he didn't light up the Bears defense. No, they just ran the ball and he played perfect.
And then if you want to argue that, I mean, Peyton's opponent was Rex Grossman. So there you go.
Exactly. It's you play who you play. And it would be, I'll take it the next way. Can we agree that the Niners, they're not way better than Detroit, but they are better than Detroit? Okay. So
yeah,
that's not okay. So that even if you disagree, that wouldn't be an unreasonable take. So if let's say it was Goff and Goff breaks through and he gets back to the Super Bowl, and let's say he shits the bed. Well, it's just Jared Goff. All the other stuff that he's done doesn't matter. He lost in the Super Bowl game. You can always, unless you're beating prime heavyweight versus prime heavyweight, you can always find something negative about it to say. You could say, like, one of the funniest, I think it's funny. I don't put a lot of stock in it, but I do think it's hilarious when people troll Brady for losing the old broken down Peyton Manning towards the end of his career. It's like, well, he wasn't playing Peyton. He was playing the no-fly zone. Like those, like,
that defense was just ugly. Nobody wants any part of that.
It was historic. Peyton wasn't dropping in the nickel coverage.
I mean, this is the same defense that literally ruined Cam Newton. Like they ruined him.
And Cam Newton deservedly won an MVP and ran over linebackers and made them feel like small men. And you can always cut it different ways, however you want to cut it. If you're Eli, you're like, I beat him. Oh, look, that's great. It's like, yeah, but then you know what you also did?
Eli's like, what? You're gonna hold me out at the Hall of Fame? Look who I beat twice. You couldn't beat me twice.
You all wanted me to do it, and I did it. And it's like, but you didn't actually play that well. And he goes, it doesn't matter. I got the ring. And that's the ring counting culture issue that I have. So I'll give you my top 5.
Okay. So now you're going to put them in order? Okay.
I'll put them in order.
All right. Let's have it.
Okay. So Mahomes at 1. I have Elway at 2. I have Elway / Manning. It changes on the day, really. Today, I'm on a Broncos podcast. I'm going to say Elway, Manning.
I like Brady to think this is a collective podcast.
Collective. Well, I mean, but I was a Broncos fan, and I'm fan adjacent.
For a hot minute.
Technically, I'm in the Broncos Board Hall of Fame, and I was inducted as a rival.
You are.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
Well, the funny thing is, though, and Poet would notice, is that when I got inducted into that, people were like, when did we let Pats fans be in here? Because I like Brady. So, like, they were giving me a hard time about it.
Those goddamn trolls.
That was the funniest time ever, though.
And Marino at 5. Marino at 5 rounds.
All right, so wait, Elway at 2. Who's at 3? Marino or no?
So it's Mahomes at 1, Elway 2, Manning 3, Brady 4, Marino 5.
Okay.
You've heard me. I don't know if I've talked about why it's Manning over Brady on the podcast. I know you've heard me talk about it a million times. Just for the listeners, just real quick. I value guys who did it without a great defense in the era where defense truly won championships. And there were at least one championship game, AFC obviously, against the Pats, where the league had to go back to enforcing illegal contact because of what the Patriots, the DBs, were doing to wide receivers specifically. And so
the Manning rule.
Yeah, well, just the regular rule, just to enforce it.
No, it's Manning rule.
The Manning rule, the rule that had existed for 20. It's the Mel Blanc rule, actually, that had existed since the 70s, and then it became the Manning rule.
Right.
I think the other thing too is there's no cloud of cheating. Now, a lot of this isn't on Tom. Tom didn't do the videotapes. How much those deflated footballs, and yes, he did deflate them, mattered. We don't know. I suspect they didn't matter a lot, especially against the Colts or whoever it was. Maybe it was the Titans. I don't remember, because I think they ran for like 400 yards or something silly because it was a cold weather game. The continued spy taping, the fact that McDaniels went away and continued taping. There was another. I mean, there's just so much. It makes you feel like there's foul play there, and it does put a bit of a cloud over it. Now, I will say this in defense of Brady. A lot of what I said you can't link back to him. And I do suspect, if we're being honest, that a lot of quarterbacks, especially older guys who like the grip of the ball, different type of way, might have tried to mess with the footballs, for their own machinations and performance. I don't think
they've actually proven that. Even like Brad Johnson did some stuff,
and the wide receivers, a lot of guys have it. The Jerry Rice is the stickum for Jerry Rice. Like that's
right.
Go look at that. Or Manning played on the Colts, and when the RCA Dome, I don't know if it's still called that. I don't think it is. They piped in noise when they were on.
I mean, you can go back all the way to when
the Steelers were the Steelers and the Raiders fought wars.
Well, I was going to tell you, Denver playing Kansas City, they were putting Vaseline on their arms, and Shanahan's like, "Yeah, we're just trying to keep warm." Like, yeah, right. Sure you are.
Yeah,
you just want Derek Thomas sliding off your arm. That's all you want.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is, my take on Brady is not popular, but when I watch the best of Brady, I see greatness. I do. But I see greatness that is different. Like when I watch Manning, I watch a guy who made his own offense with his coordinator, who took it different places with him and implemented it. I see a guy who was the smartest, at least big time quarterback ever almost immediately. I saw Brady get to grow into that. It's just a degree of difficulty thing. Why do I have Elway over Brady is it's just hard for me to believe that if you took those guys. Now, granted, it's weird because Belichick doesn't like talented quarterbacks, so that is a mind-numbing thing to me. You're right. He's like, I want Mac Jones, and then I want to draft him again in Bailey Zappi form. Like, why? Why, Bill? Why? If you coach them up and you force their ego, Marino had ego problems. He did not want to run the ball. He wanted to throw it. There's no reason to believe they cannot run. If you have a big arm, you can run the West Coast offense system. You just can. And Mahomes is the perfect example of that. With Brady, I could easily look at it and move him up to 2. And sometimes I've been like, maybe he should be 2. I could easily move him up as a tie to Mahomes. There was a point, and my list does change. At one point where I'm looking at Mahomes, the way I feel about Mahomes is how I was feeling about Rodgers. And then that whole thing just went, not even just like recently, but 5-6 years ago.
Well, the funny thing about for me is, Manning's always been a cerebral quarterback, which I really appreciate. Like he's smart. Yeah. And you kind of started making a point, I'm sure, where you were going with, like, if you swap John and Tom and put them on this respective teams, John would probably beat the Giants those 2 times.
Yes, because the mobility, like just
right.
being able to
and that's the thing. I think that's why I kind of put Brady. Like Brady was never like a big scrambler, but he could do it more than the giraffe that's Peyton Manning. And it's I felt like he brought a little bit more to it in that part of the game, but. Look, you give me any one of these quarterbacks, I'll take any one of them.
You should
right now.
Right. No, exactly. If you like, I'll tell you this. Like, let's take the Pittsburgh roster as follows, as it is constituted.
I think even Big Ben is very underrated.
Yeah, I think Big Ben is a top 10 quarterback of all time, and it's not fun to say that because of the things that go along with
Right.
Ben Roethlisberger. But you watch him in the Super Bowl versus the Cardinals, that throw to Santonio Holmes and the catch. We're not going to leave the catch out, but it's like
That's
that's
money.
that's money, especially young Big Ben. It's like the linebacker is like, oh no, you blitzed your linebacker. Fuck off of me, bitch! Like I'm I'm bigger than you.
I think our turning point, because Neko and I talk about it all the time, is we were watching a game where they were playing the Ravens, and he already had like a bum leg, like a bad ankle or something, and he got popped, and he like got his nose broken. But the commentators, what made it so funny was the commentators were going, "Yeah, he looks like he took a shot at the face, but his nose is not broken. Meanwhile, it's like way over here. Like you could just tell."
Yeah. The Tomlin talked about that on a podcast where he was like, "I'm trying to not freak him." Like Ben knows he got jacked up. I think it was Suggs that hit him.
Probably.
And you're well acquainted with Terrell Suggs. That's a Hall of Fame. That's one of the best linebackers I've ever seen. And he's like, I'm looking at him in the eye. I'm just trying to talk to him like it's normal, but my eyes keep drifting to his nose, and it's like over here, and it's like it's not. And Ben's like, "What is it bad?" And he's like, "Nah, man." It's not like it was hanging off of his face,
right?
Or anything, but he looked like he lost a boxing match, right? Like,
right?
Yeah, he looked.
But he just kept playing. I'm like, Jesus Christ! Someone tell this guy to straighten his nose up.
Oh, but that's why it was so infuriating. He'd throw a pick 3 years after the thumb surgery and grab his thumb instantly, and it's like, bro, we know what you're doing. And the thing with Roethlisberger that really hates him or hurts him is all the guys that he beefed with on his team when they were his teammates, they did it passive aggressively through his radio show, and he had quotes like, "I'm me. I've earned the right to criticize my teammates." And it's in the locker room. Yeah, he wasn't a full blown diva, but he had some.
But the Steelers also had some crazy ass players. So Brown and fucking who's the running back that
Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah,
Bell wasn't crazy. Brown was crazy. Thank you, Vontez Perfect. I truly believe that hit changed his life for the worse. Bell was a guy whose ego, he wanted a new contract. He was arguably the best back in football. He was a 3-down back. He was dynamic. He was like, to be a running back and be a real MVP candidate, even back then, was special. And the Steelers didn't want to pay him because they saw what was happening with the position. And he got arrogant, and the Steelers got arrogant. And then what was once a beautiful relationship turned into this weird thing where then he's not playing football, and then he's a Jet, and you never go to the Jets. Like, going to the Jets is always a bad sign. It's just sad. The Jets are the new Browns. Like, it's a horrible place to be a New York Jet. I don't think it's fun at all, and I don't think I'd want to be there. I know what you're saying. Then you have Joey Porter, not exactly the best guy either. Now his son's an amazing cornerback. He was a personality. James Harrison. Like, there's something about being a stud and being a big personality and putting on the black and gold.
Right.
I think that, but the Broncos were, Romanowski was a guy. Sharp was a guy. Now Sharp is a good person. Romanowski is objectively a bad person. There's little dispute about that. But there's some dudes there, and Brother Jaded would say, he wants all those guys to be like that. I don't think you can have a cohesive team like that, but there's definitely room.
Not they're all fighting each other.
Yeah, there is definitely some room to have guys like that. So I want to bring up, just to take it back to the Super Bowl. Did you hear? I want to be precise with this. I took notes on my phone. So this was from a segment done by Florio and one of the backup quarterbacks. And he's an analyst now. He's a backup quarterback. I think it's McNown.
Okay.
They were talking about, it's 149. It's like 155 to 149 the fourth quarter. Kelsey catches a pass. He's like 3 yards or 2 yards past the line to gain. And it's a 2nd and 1. It's the really scrutinized one. And the reason why it was missed was the TV commentators were almost saying it's first down. On television, it says first down, but it's actually 2nd and 1. And so they're talking about how it didn't matter. It ended up not mattering at all because they got the first down later. Yada yada yada. But like on that play when it's supposed to be first down and it's 2nd and 1, let's say there's a bad snap, and there was some bad snaps by Creed Humphrey that game, or a sack, or a drop, or whatever, and it changes the game. Let's say that the Niners win on that drive, they turn over on down or something. That becomes the biggest controversy in sports history.
But didn't they determine that Kelsey's knee had come down? Like I remember early on, they're like, "No, that should have been a first down."
That was on another one.
Okay.
I think that was on another play because he had fallen forward. His knee was down, but the ball was so far out. I think that there were a lot of people complaining about the touchdown that the Chiefs won on, that there is a legal man. I
don't know about that, but
and I don't know about that either. I've seen people point to it and explain it. After the Lions-Cowboys game, I no longer know what that penalty means. And
all I know is, man, you allowed them to fucking drive the entire field. Like you can't stop them, dude. I mean,
but here's the counterpoint, because we are very similar on calls. Like you can't blame the refs unless it's like fixed or something. Because on the McCaffrey touchdown, there's a very compelling case that there was an illegal man downfield. Now I don't care. You gave up the touchdown. And I don't think that it really impacted the play. But what I'm getting at is, like, if you go back to that, I almost said Jets, that Rams Saints NFC Championship game, that horrible no call and pass interference, all the Saints fans say that's why we lost. Well, you had a huge lead and you blew it. You had several turnovers, at least one turnover in the regular allotted time, and then in overtime, you get the ball first. It's old overtime rules. And Breeze fumbles or throws a pick, and then you lose almost immediately after that. It's like, yeah, that call should have gone your way, and you probably would have won. But the Rams are driving, and they had to settle for, I think, a field goal off of a blatantly missed roughing the passer where Goff, and it's not like a 2024 roughing the passer. It's like a 1990 roughing the passer. It's like, you almost killed that man. What did he do to you? It was just obvious. And that was the moment where I was like, I think it's fine to say they screwed that call. They got that wrong. They should do better. And it's okay to talk about, especially when you're in the heat of the moment. Okay. And it's definitely okay to talk about penalties like at large. Like when you're talking about, like, I don't think the reffing is good this year. I think they need to do better at this. But it's really, really, really hard to believe that the refs are the reason why you lost that game. And you're right. Like, if that's illegal formation, and I don't think it was on the Chiefs for the walk-off, you let them go. You let them go down the whole field. You didn't score a touchdown. You didn't cover the wide receivers.
I could go all the way back to that 4th and 1. Like, dude, you stop that, you win the game. Like, that's it.
Exactly. And you know what? You're driving on them. That McDuffie tips the ball. You're driving on them. They tackle McCaffrey after a 1-yard gain. They make you kick the field goal. If you convert there, you probably win. Also, McCaffrey, he fumbled. I love McCaffrey, but he did fumble in the first part of it. Where I feel bad for the Niners is that muffed punt was brutal, because that's just bad football luck. That's bad. Yeah. Here's another bad football luck. I think someone said, I'd have to check the box score, but the Chiefs fumbled 4 times or 5 times, and they recovered all but 1. So now the ball's just not bouncing. You know what I mean? Like that,
right. Yeah. And that, look, it's how it works, man. Like, it's luck of the draw. You got to get some bounces that go your way.
Yeah.
And really, like, you think even that early interception in this to start the second half for Mahomes, like, I thought, oh, that's not good at all.
This is the time to separate. Separate.
Right. And so they couldn't do it. And that you can't blame the Chiefs when you can't capitalize. You can't. They'll tell you all day long, man. Like, you're settling for field goals and you're never going to win the game.
Exactly. And especially when it's not like their defense is bad and they're stopping you on flukes. Like the Chiefs defense was good and they lined up man to man. They blitzed a lot. Like it's like the Baltimore thing when we were like trying to figure out what Baltimore, their offensive coordinator, was doing. It's almost like they didn't know that Spagnuolo blitzed a lot. It's like he's Steve Spagnuolo. Steve Spagnuolo is like, if this blitz doesn't get home, I'm going to lose. And he lights a cigarette and he just doesn't care. Like he's that guy. He's like a defensive coordinator, like it's DC doesn't stand for defensive coordinator. It's like defensive cowboy. Like man just doesn't give a fuck. Like he is.
Well, that's what happened in the Super Bowl with the Packers. Shanahan, Greg Robinson's coming up to me. He's like, "Well, what do you want me to do here?" And he's like, "Just do what you've been doing the entire game. Blitz the shit out of Favre."
Yeah.
And that's what we did. So like you live and die by it, but if you're
who you are, you have to be who you are. Now, can you overdo it like Campbell arguably did? Yeah, I understand that too. But like when they talk about like the stuff with Shanahan about them not knowing the rules, I don't, I honestly, I'm going to be real with you. I think some of the players knew the rules. I think some of the players weren't paying attention and didn't. But there are people who are banging on him for wanting the third possession was his argument. The argument against that goes, you're operating on 3 downs. You kick a field goal. And now the Chiefs are operating on 4 downs.
Yeah.
And the Chiefs can go for it. And if they convert it on 2, they win. This is my response to it. We've never had these rules active in the Super Bowl. So it's hard to say that he's wrong. Secondly, if your response to him doing that is, well, I could go for 2 and win. You could also go for 2 and lose. And he put pressure on you to go for 2 because he gets the ball back. I'll take it the next step forward as well. People are like, well, they're going to operate an extra down and you don't. Says who? Coaches go for it on 4th down all the time now. The analytics, which you can't overdo, but the analytics oftentimes support it. Field position, like even conservative coaches, you have your kicker's not great, and you have the ball on their 39, and that's a long field goal, and it's 4th and 4. Even Schottenheimer would be like, I guess we have to go for it, right? Like it's not like that's a super rare thing. So he made the decision, and yeah, we might be sitting there feeling like, well, if they go for it, they're going to get it because they're the Chiefs and they're going to win. But he's also operating under this presumption that 1, his defense, which did play well, doesn't shit the bed. And 2, it's also not like he's just trying to go out there and kick a field goal. So would I have deferred the ball? Maybe. I think if I'm the Chiefs, I probably would have liked that they did it that way. But if they were playing a different team, like it's so like 2020, we don't have enough. Hindsight's 2020. We don't have enough data on the situation. I think people are being unfair to Shanahan there. What he did do that I absolutely hated, that drove me insane, and I'm probably the only one that feels like that. When he kicked the final field goal to go ahead, I would have gone for it. I truly would have, because I operate under the presumption they're going to get the ball back with 2 timeouts and $1.50 and change. So they're at least getting a field goal. I need 6 points. And I know that Butker, like that record for the field goal got broken twice, which is actually kind of funny. That's going to be a fun piece of little trivia. Which Super Bowl did the all-time record for field goals get broken twice? It's going to be that one, obviously. I'd rather go for it and live with maybe I don't get it, and then they have to go down and score, and just be more aggressive.
That's funny because that situation to me is different than the Lions one. So the Lions needed a field goal to tie. However, in this case, the game was already tied, and like I said, if they convert the 3rd and 4, even for a 1st down, they get to kill more clock and keep the ball. So
they're kicking a field goal.
In that instance, I would probably agree with you. I think I probably would have gone for it because even if you don't get it, it's still tied. Like
it's just you can only and the other thing is, and I hadn't thought about this. It's so obvious I hadn't thought about it until earlier today, when someone brought it up and some stuff I was watching. I was watching some of the plays back, prepping for this, and I think Romo's talking about it. Your defense is gassed. You're the Niners. Your defense is gassed, and they look so gassed in overtime as well. Because we had commercial break straight into overtime. I really like that. I really like that they just went into it. It felt organic. So just go for it and if you don't get it, call timeout, rest up your defense, and just live where it goes. Because you can't to win against the Chiefs, you have to beat them. You can't survive against them. They're not a team where you can get that field goal and do like the classic defensive stand where they turn it over on downs. And the reality of the situation is when you're playing against a team like the Chiefs. Now I'm kind of arguing against myself from what I just said like a couple minutes ago. You have to play against the Chiefs, and you're not just playing against a normal team. So I'm
Right.
pulling up the standings right now. Let's see here. Do you want to do a quick prediction over who wins what?
Yeah, let's just obviously it's early because we haven't even touched on free agency or the draft, but let's just based off this year. Again, we are assuming, let's just assume everybody comes back. So even for Denver, if Russell comes back or if the Jets get a healthy Rodgers, let's go back and like pick who's going to win the divisions and how they might play out. So like for the AFC East, we got Buffalo, Miami, Jets, and New England. How do you think that's going to play out next year?
New England's going to be awful because they're going to have a rookie quarterback. Most likely.
Right.
I don't like the Jets. First, there's a lot of toxicity around Aaron Rodgers. It's kind of faded away.
It has changed really weirdly with him, but yeah.
Yeah, it like some of the things that he's saying, and also the owner bashing Zach Wilson, and it's just a hectic place. And there's reports that they couldn't get Flacco or a real veteran quarterback to come in because Rodgers didn't want it. He wanted it to be Zach, and there's all this toxic stuff. So I'm picking the Jets and the Patriots, the battle for last place. Okay. I think Miami's going to take a step back. I don't think they can keep Teron Armstead, and I know that we're supposed to kind of keep things the way that they are, but they're in a rough cap spot, and he's expensive. He's also injury prone. He's really good, but he's also injury prone. So it's like Buffalo by default because it's weird. The Patriots got to run this weak division, and then things change, and it's still a weak division. So I'll pick Buffalo, although I'm kind of worried about the Diggs situation. What about you?
Yeah, I think I agree. And I think one of the key things here is, until Miami can prove, I know it's such a weird thing to hold over their head, but until they can prove they can win in bad weather on a consistent basis, like I think it's going to be Buffalo because, Buffalo can prove they can just hang in just about any kind of weather. But
Josh Allen can win you a game. Yeah.
Right. And, I kind of root for Miami in some ways just because they haven't done anything in a long time, but I just, until they do, I don't think they're gonna.
Yeah, no, right. And it's also a great point because like that division's so weirdly constructed, East Coast teams and a Florida team.
Right.
No, it's 3 cold weather places and then one of the nicest places to live in the country in terms of just weather. I'm not bashing those other spots. I completely agree with you. Here's the other thing too. Now you have a team that we know they can't run the ball north and south. And what are they in that cap situation? How are they going to change the offense? I'm sure they can do some things because I like their head coach. But Bradley Chubb tore his Achilles, and so did Jalen Phillips. So their 2 best defensive players, other than maybe Ramsey, and their 2 best pass rushers are almost certainly not going to be the same caliber of player. Chubb had a great year. He led the league in forced fumbles. He was on pace to get like 13 or 14 sacks, was just under what Myles Garrett did. So apparently that means you're a god. Fucking idiot voters. Fucking mouth breathers. It's so. I might have to do a solo podcast and just get it all the.
I saw something. It was like a picture of Max Crosby and his wife sitting there. He looked not pissed, but just like, what the fuck, man? What do I got to do? I'm on a shitty team and I can play like this, but they're still talking about these other guys.
Yeah, I do feel bad for Crosby. He's a good story too, and he's a monster. If Myles Garrett is better than him, and I did say if, it's not by much. I'll just say that. No. And I think Watt's better than him, but I'm not going to sit there and tell you that Watt's way better. So we go to the AFC North. I am going to operate under the presumption that Joe Burrow stays healthy. I'm going to pick the Bengals to win the division because I think that I saw a couple different paths that they could have to keep T. Higgins. I also think that if you have Jamar Chase and you have those emerging tight ends, they might have to replace Mixon, but I feel like even if they lose Higgins, they can find a way. Maybe they replace him with a veteran guy. I feel like they can finesse it. I think their defense was actually the reason why they had a winning record. God, they're last place and had 9 freaking wins. I'm going to
That
say
whole
that
division this year was nuts.
yeah, I'm going to pick Cleveland to get last. They had 3 fluky wins that got them to 11. I also think that here's the nasty. This isn't even me being a hater, and I am biased against Cleveland. Their quarterback situation is hell. Deshaun Watson is not good anymore. Flacco was better than him. Flacco wasn't actually all that good. So what do you do at quarterback? And can you really just luck sack your way through a season to double-digit wins again with a hard schedule? So I'm going to have Cleveland at the bottom. I am presuming that Pickett is their starting quarterback. Although, get this fun fact: we are now the favorites to get Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, and Tannehill. Vegas has the favorites to get all 3 of those guys, and
Oof.
Russell Wilson. So
if you get Fields, man, that would be nasty.
that couldn't, and then the rumor is that he costs a second. I would give a second for
a
Justin
second,
Fields.
dude. Fuck the Steelers. Give the Broncos. Jeez, I'll give you that.
And you're not even a Justin Fields believer, but you're just like,
right? Like, dude, I just need somebody with promise.
Yeah, he has talent. He's tough. Lord knows he has suffered. If trials and tribulations make you a tough man, he is a tough man, for he has suffered in Chicago. There are points where even you were like, I feel bad for him. Why do they block?
I mean, the only alternative is for me to go and kidnap fucking Stroud and take him down to Denver. But
you are a Bronco now. You are a Bronco. You're just trying to Jedi mind trick him. So I'm going to pick Cleveland. I'm going to pick Pittsburgh to be second to last. I'm going to pick us to have 9 wins. I just don't believe in Pickett, and I like Arthur Smith as an offensive coordinator. I like a lot of the guys, some of the coaching decisions that we have made, but I just don't know how much juice the offense is going to have with Pickett. Then I have to put Baltimore finishing behind Cincinnati because they have a good quarterback, they have an excellent defense, and they have a good coach. How do you see the North?
Boy, that last spot.
It's a fucking bitch of a division.
It is, it's so weird. Do we know if Tomlin's staying? Because I know he was.
Tomlin said he's coming back. Yeah, he's coming back.
Okay. With that in mind, I think I do have the Browns last because they don't really have an identity, and that's for they, like you said, they've been kind of. I mean, it's kind of a credit and also a negative thing that they were able to do what they were able to do with all the crap that was going on. But I don't think they can get away with that twice. So they would finish last. I definitely have the Steelers right on top of them, mainly because Tomlin's just a better coach. It's not that I think the Browns coach is bad, but they do have a lot of disarray there.
They need Chubb back. I mean, the James, I can't remember his last name. He's
Chubb would make a huge difference. But let's see. At second, I don't know. Even with Burrow, I that offensive line terrifies me. There's
I know
they're very competitive, but then again, the Ravens will be facing some issues where I don't think OBJ will be back. He's not really a major factor anyway right now.
Clowney might be gone. Van Noy, who's like, how they kind of have like pass rush by committee.
Yeah.
They might be losing some of those pieces, and Clowney is never a guy who stays around long and plays well at the same spot. He's kind of when he left Cleveland, he bashed Myles Garrett and the defensive coordinator because they do everything to set him up for sacks. I thought that was a garbage criticism. I thought it didn't make any sense, but it got, he's that kind of guy. Waste of talent. He had a really good career. Should have been a Hall of Famer. It's a bitch of a division. Here's the other thing too, but Lamar has some health issues too.
Yeah.
And so it could be, here's the thing. Lamar could get hurt and Burrow could get hurt and the Steelers could steal the division against the Browns. They were like, we have 10 wins. Why? I don't fucking know, but we do. But
this is all based on health. So I think right now, I would still have Cincinnati second and Baltimore first.
I think that's because you could also argue that Baltimore has just more talent on that team.
Yeah. All right. So AFC South, what do you got?
I got the Houston. I'm just not betting against Stroud. I am a Trevor Lawrence guy, but last year was a thing that happened and we all saw it, and we can't act like it wasn't a thing. I'm
Yeah, it
taking
wasn't a mirage, that's for
no,
sure.
it was not. So
Especially
I'll
what
start.
they did to Miles Garrett. Like, I'm sorry, like that guy talks so much shit, and you got your ass beat.
Yeah, he really ran up on you and gave you work. I'm gonna pick here's my hot take. I'm gonna pick the Titans to win 2 games just off the bat. They're
Okay.
resetting. I'm gonna pick them to win 2 games.
Is
I'm gonna
there
put
is there truth that Henry might be moving on from them?
yeah, the way that he said goodbye after the season, it looks like they're gonna
Okay.
cut him. Or I don't know if his contract's up. I'll pick Tennessee to be last. I'm gonna pick right now. I'm gonna pick Jacksonville to be second to last. I'm gonna pick Indy to be second and
Okay.
Houston to be first. I have here's the fear that I have in Jacksonville. They have nice players on offense. They don't have
Right.
anyone who's truly dominant. They have a very good head coach, but Peterson doesn't seem to be able to have sustained success. And there's just
Yeah, it is weird because he did pretty well in Philly, but
Philly, and then he
here,
lost a power struggle and they got rid of him. Like, I understand that that's not on him, but Anubis, there's just something with him. Like, I get a feeling. Like, it's not scientific. It's not a great argument. I just get a
yeah,
feeling.
no, I can
Ridley's
see it.
gone. He's a free agent. And he was up and down for them, but he's a talent. They don't have a real number one wide receiver. Their running game is good, but it feels finesse. Ingram is I wish they'd actually utilize him more. And that defense was not good. That defense was not
Yeah.
good, and they might lose Josh Allen. Losing Josh Allen, their best defensive player,
Oh,
is on the
that'd be
table.
huge.
It's on that he's gonna be. I have read that he is expected to command one of the biggest contracts ever for a defensive player because he's a great pass rusher. He's not gonna get you 20 sacks, but he gets 12 to 14. He can play the run. He can cover. He's just an all-around beast, and those guys get paid.
Yeah.
So a lot of people would I think a lot of people would pick the division to be the exact same as it was with Houston, Indy, and Tennessee in that order, or maybe Jacksonville has a bounce back year. But that's the way that I see it.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of great points. I do have Houston winning it again. I think they're only going to get better. They're really young.
They get Tank Dell
Uh,
back. Tank Dell, look
Jacksonville,
out for
I
him.
think Jacksonville, the Colts are. That's where the hiccup is because I do think the Titans will finish last. But Jacksonville is either going to come out pissed and play better, or they're just going to, as you said, they're just going to keep sinking down the line. But Indianapolis is still kind of young themselves. They got a young quarterback who played very well. But is it going to be enough to overtake that second spot?
I
That's gonna be
know.
the trick.
Is Indy's defense going to be as good as
Right.
it was?
But they do have a running back. They do
They
have a
do,
great
but
running attack. So
here's the bitch of it too. Pittman's a free agent, and there's about 5 big names. There's Higgins, there's Ayuk, there's Pittman, and there's one or two other guys. So are they going to be able to keep Pittman? And if they do, they're going to have to give a guy who's been good but not consistently great. He was great last year, all things considered, a lot of money. I mean, these teams have brutal decisions to make. But here's the other thing that Indy has. Even if Richardson's doesn't pan out, if you're a hyper-mobile quarterback, you can win 11, 12 games just as you don't have tape on me and look what I do to you, right? Like you can gut teams that way. I do like Richardson as a prospect, and I know that you like the pick too because you got to swing big, especially in the AFC. So it feels like the AFC South is actually the hardest one for me to call. North wasn't easy. And then there's the West.
good old West.
I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win. I'm going to pick the Chargers second. I'm a Herbert guy, but if he does not do well this year, I am going to be real disappointed in him. I'm going to pick the Broncos to get last and the Vegas to get ahead of them. I'm picking you all to get last. I think it's going to finally give you the reset that you all kind of need to start the rebuild. If you keep Russ, you're just not going to have money to make a competitive roster. And if you don't keep him, you're just not going to have money to keep a competitive roster. You could do the thing where if you get the quarterback, steal some wins, catch people off guard. But I do look at Denver as a team. I kind of see them with the Chargers because the Chargers, Keenan Allen's is most likely going to be gone. That running back, Mr. 20 touchdowns a year, his name escapes me right now. He's really good.
Hmm.
He's probably going to be gone. Mike Williams is always hurt, so now they need Quentin Johnson to step up,
Right.
and he's inconsistent. On the other hand, Harbaugh knows how to run the ball, so it's Chiefs are the easiest pick, and then it's just projection. I will have to say I really like Vegas's head coach, and that team believes in him.
Yeah.
Um, who their quarterback is. Like they really might try to trade up and get Jaden Daniels. And I think that's what they're going to try to do. I think they're going to try to turn the roster over and get some studs. So there's a lot of that division has the most unknowns based off of who the quarterbacks are.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you. I think the Chiefs are going to win. Like we're going based off what if they were to repeat all the players, etc. Now, obviously, you have to take in consideration the Chargers with their new coach with Harbaugh. That's going to change that dynamic immensely. And I do think if Harbaugh has a lot more success, depending on free agency and draft, they could give the Chiefs a run for their money in that division. The
Yeah.
Raiders will be much better as well because now they,
They don't
like you
have
said,
McDaniels.
they believe in their coach. They played better down the stretch. They beat the Chiefs, like beat the pants off them at the end of the year. Uh, so I do think the Raiders, though, I don't know if they're going to be good enough to beat the other two. Denver, if we're going in the same way we are now, we probably won't even get 8 wins. I think we just got lucky on a run that just somehow appeared out of nowhere, which sort of did us a disservice going into the draft next year.
Yeah,
But
and we both saw that coming, and
yeah,
we both that's really good analysis. I mean, here's the thing too. If you give me a crystal ball and I know who Vegas's quarterback is, it makes it a whole lot easier to predict that
yeah,
division. Because it's
yeah,
like we're trying to keep this based off of Leicester, but Aiden O'Connell is not their starter. Um, we get to the NFC now. So let's
yep,
just do the East. So you have
yep,
Dallas. This is the order: Dallas, Philly, New York, Washington. I'm going to pick Washington. I'm going to pick Washington and the Giants to stay at the bottom.
yep.
I might put Washington ahead of New York because Daniel Jones, he gets worse every year. And if that's their starter next year, God bless those poor Giants fans. Washington, I hate what happened to Eric Bieniemy. I thought he actually got some decent stuff out of that quarterback, especially because he wasn't the one that built that offensive line.
Right.
Bieniemy's probably going back to the Chiefs. He's probably going to be their new offensive coordinator, and so that sucks for the rest of
Yeah,
the league.
yeah.
I'm going to pick Philly to be ahead of Dallas, and it's not even that. I think that by the end of next season, Sirianni will be fired. I do. And I think that they're already trying to offload. Fletcher Cox already came out and said he wants to play with Cameron Hayward because they're friends. Hassan Reddick is already linked to trades, and he came out and said he didn't ask to be traded. So they're looking to turn over some of their pricier defensive players. Now they draft well; they have guys in the waiting in the wings, but now you're asking them to step up and carry a load. And also, let's be honest, we don't like their offensive coordinator. We don't like how their offense looked at the end of the year. We don't like their secondary. We don't like
Mhm.
how they tackle. We don't like their energy. I'm an AJ Brown guy. I didn't like some of the things that I heard coming from him. I think Sirianni is immature. So
Yeah.
why am I picking them to be ahead of Dallas? Well, I think we all
Better
know what
road
Dallas
team.
is. Better road team. Dallas is a team where they don't have a running back. Now it's easier to get one. I understand that. But
Mhm.
they don't have a running back that they love. Some of the fans want them to go get Derrick Henry, and I'm like, you don't have the cap space to do that unless he's going to take a huge pay cut.
And plus you had Elliott, who is almost he's not as good as Henry, but he's the same type of guy. So like
Yeah,
you don't want to keep going down that road if you're not really going to use him. Like fuck that. Just find another way. But you don't,
right.
as you say, you don't want to overpay for Henry if you're going to run into the same problems.
Just draft a rookie running back who holds on to the ball, deal with the growing pains, have him
Yeah.
be a power back, and
Yeah.
like get Ray Davis from Kentucky is a guy who
Yeah.
falls in between Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. Right
Yeah.
now, he is falling between the third and fifth round on mock drafts. I'm not saying that
Mhm.
Ray Davis is the next, Eric Dickerson, but I'm saying it's like, but Dallas is a team that might overthink it because they do weird things with their running backs. And then you look at the rest of that offense. You sort of like your tight end. CD Lamb, they have a whole years of coverage to try to figure out how to deal with him. Cooks was okay. He's older. He's got some injury concerns. Dak is a good quarterback, but he's not what he was. The offensive line people talk about Dallas's line really weirdly. Some people still act like it's the line that Zeke had that was just the best in football, or maybe it was behind only Philly/Tennessee. Some people think it sucks. I think people are just not used to a Dallas line that's just good but not great. Tyler Smith was a really good pick for them, but it's just hard to look at Dallas and think that a team that already had a coach that was on the hot seat last year is going to do any better. Like, it's a Mike McCarthy team. They do the same Mike McCarthy things. It's the Dallas offense under Mike McCarthy. It's going to do the same stuff. Are they really going to rely on their defense and special teams to get them, like, what was it, like 4 points a game on average because of all those touchdowns or something? No, that's not sustainable. No defense has done the greatest defense of all time is the 2000 Ravens, and they did that. They're really good the next year. They weren't doing that, and it's just asking a lot. I expect the East to be compelling early on, and by the midway through the season, it's like, oh, this is looking rough, and then by the end of the season, it's just like these guys are dead in the water. Yeah. How do you see it?
I would agree with you at the top there. I think the Eagles do win the division. I think they kind of get back on track. Again, it's all going to depend on whether or not Hurts comes back from what was really a lackluster year for him.
It got worse as the season went on.
The Cowboys, they're still going to be in the mix, obviously.
They're talented.
McCarthy is like the biggest problem there, I think, and I'm surprised that Jones stuck with them. But the bottom, I think the Washington Commanders will probably do a little better than they did this year, just not enough to make the dent. Like, I picked last season that they'd be a lot better than they were.
Yeah.
And on paper, they're actually looking pretty good, but it's all about how you can win. They had lots of close games.
They did. And let me ask you this. They got rid of Sweat and they got rid of Chase Young. Chase Young, it already looks like they made the right decision because he didn't really do a damn thing in San Francisco. Sweat was pretty good in Chicago, and he looks like he's going to be better there. So do you think that that's just a case of them having like a lot of talent and just offloading, or not wanting to give out questionable contracts to guys who, one guy should be great and he's hurt a lot and has attitude issues, reportedly. I don't know if that's true. Another guy is good but not great. Do you think that they can overcome that lack of talent on the defense line? Because that was one of their strengths last year.
Right.
Until they got rid of it.
Yeah, that's a good question because, for whatever reason, they kind of look Sweat. I'm surprised they let him go, but
I would have paid him.
Yeah. Chase, I kind of got because he did get hurt. And then maybe it's not all his fault because that injury was pretty brutal. But
yeah,
as you said, in San Fran, he didn't even really make a huge difference there, which is really funny because I know the Niners were kind of like all in. So they had Gregory, which they took from Denver after we let him go. They picked him up. He didn't really make a factor in the game. Bosa was actually very good. He actually showed up.
He did, yeah.
They just did a good job of kind of clamping him down. But, I don't know. You could swap either the Commanders and Giants. It really wouldn't matter. I think it's just going to be that way by the end of it. But
do they have a coach?
Something tells me, though, that the Redskins, or God, I'm calling the Redskins, the Commanders are a bit more scrappy. I know the Giants won some games they probably shouldn't have, but the Commanders, I think, they got a bit more going for them. And I think you made a good point about the Daniel Jones thing. I think if I have to take Sam Howell over Jones, I probably will.
And they don't have wideouts. Like, they still, Sterling Shepard was going to be a good player. And that guy is snake bitten. I feel horrible for him.
Yeah.
I watch so much football. I don't know who else is on there. I know their tackles suck. I know their tackles.
They got who's the running back?
They got Saquon.
Yeah, so
and they don't want to pay him. They don't want to pay him.
Yeah, so they might lose him at some point. So it's like, man, I don't know. You guys don't got a whole lot going for you here.
They don't. And if they go with a quarterback, then they have to pay Saquon because it's the same thing that the Colts were in, where it's like, we don't really have a lot of great players on offense, and we need a strong running game to support this kid. And so it's so some of the things that these teams do is just so frustrating. Dan Quinn, here's the issue that Washington has. Dan Quinn's their head coach. So they're going to end up with a new quarterback and pair him with a defensive head coach. Yay! Ooh. Like, it doesn't it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And the Giants head coach, Dable, I think he's still there, right? I don't think they
Yeah,
fired him.
I think so.
He was
Yeah, I don't think
always on the sidelines throwing his quarterbacks under the like. He just 2 years ago he looked like a genius, and then this last year he looked like a baby. And so the NFC East now it's going to be forced down our throat because those are huge markets, successful franchises.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the more fun division is the NFC North. I'm
Oh yeah.
gonna pick the Packers to win it. Because I'm going to presume I'm going to pick the
Ooh.
Packers to win it. I'm going to presume that their wide receivers can stay a little bit healthier. I'm going to pick Detroit to fall back a little bit. They're going to have to deal for the first time ever. They're going to have a rough schedule for the first time ever. This last year they had expectations and they rose to meet them. Now do it.
Yeah.
Now do it again. Because remember when Jacksonville did this with Gabbert and the
Hey,
Saxonville defense and all
do you
that?
remember? Do you remember who picked the Lions to win this division?
I believe that was the football genius known as DJ Nico.
Yeah.
Fuck thongs.
She's sitting over here just listening.
Just listening. I presume the Bears are picking Caleb Williams, so I'm going to have them over the Vikings. I presume that Kirk Cousins isn't going to be back.
Yeah. But you have to go with they are back, though. You have to.
That is true. I guess I'm looking at it from the standpoint of
because we're going to redo this again coming around.
We are.
And all that, but
The way I can justify it is Kirk has openly said he wants to be back, and Jefferson says that he wants Kirk back, and the Vikings haven't said anything. So he is a free agent. It does seem like they're going to. I don't know. They also have a dingus head coach, so I'll pick Green Bay at 1, Detroit at 2, Chicago 3, Minnesota at 4. Obviously, Green Bay and Detroit should be playoff teams. How do you see it?
Detroit is young, but I think now with all the experience of this year, I think they're hungry, and I think they're going to win the division again. However, right on their tail is going to be Green Bay. Jordan Love is coming to his own. That dude really impressed me down the stretch. I thought that he'd kind of flame out, especially early. Now the last two, if it stays the same, I expect Jordan Fields to get better and come back, and so I think he's going to play better. And so I think the Vikings window is closing very fast, and I think that they're going to fall down the last.
Daniel Hunter, their stud pass rusher, I think is his name. He's slated to get paid, and it's hard for Minnesota because 2 years ago they way overachieved, and then this year they should have had a winning record. Yeah, Cousins played really well, but they had losing games with him, and then he gets hurt, and then Nick Mullins is their quarterback for some fucking reason, and Dobbs
did all right though.
He did, and then they didn't go back to him, and it was silly. The South. Oh God.
Oof. We go from like the AFC South to this one. It's like night and day.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick. Okay, I have no faith.
I should say the AFC North.
Compared
to this one. Yeah.
Look at the Panthers are going to be horrible next year, and poor Bryce's career is going to be a short thing. I'm convinced of it. Atlanta, I want to pick them. I'm going to pick them to get second. I want to pick New Orleans to get third. I think New Orleans is declining, and their head coach lost. Did they fire Allen?
I don't know. I have to look that up because.
Let me take a look. No, I think Allen is still
they
there.
certainly underachieved. That's for sure.
They did, and Dennis Allen he lost when Jameis Winston the offense says no, we're getting our guy a touchdown at the end of the season, and the coach says no, and they do it. He's lost the locker room, and that's already a bad omen. Carr wasn't as either. I was completely wrong about Derek Carr, or he's already just started declining in his 30s. He was up and down, but it's mostly down. He was not very good last year. They have wear and tear. And here's the thing with Tampa. They have a lot of guys who could go, but they also had the most rookies in the league. I think the most rookie snaps. So they still made the playoffs and won a playoff game with that. So even if they lose Mike Evans, even if Goodwin isn't healthy, they have stuff to build off of. And Baker Mayfield grew up a little bit, and he's comfortable there. It's not a lot of shuffling. I'll pick Atlanta to second, Tampa first, New Orleans third, and Carolina bottom dweller. I don't know how else to call it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I might have Tampa first. I'm rooting for Baker to have another good season, even though as a win-loss record, it was not that great. But he had a really good season. I was kind of happy for him. Secondly,
Yeah.
I think I'm still going to stick with the Saints. It's just because if we're
Mm.
going off of now, I think Carr's just an experienced quarterback, good enough to get him to stay there.
The defense is good too. So, I
Yeah,
mean, you have a basis for that. That it
yeah.
makes sense.
And the Falcons, I thought they'd be a lot better this year. I can't remember where I picked them. I thought I definitely had them higher because I thought Ritter was going to turn that corner. But when Tyler Heineke came in and played either the same or a little bit better, it kind of told me that maybe Ritter's just not the guy or not ready. But that anything can happen with that team. They have beyond Robinson, who is fucking amazing as a running back.
Drake London, Kyle Pitts.
Yeah.
It'd be amazing if they just throw the ball to Kyle Pitts.
I mean, shit, if they could find a way to get another quarterback that steps up,
They're
and
in the
plays better than
Justin
Ritter.
Fields market. They're in the
Yeah.
Justin Fields market.
Yeah.
They are a
And
team.
poor Carolina. I mean, what are you gonna do there?
That owner is a curse, man. I mean, that owner
Yeah.
is. We could do a whole
Yeah.
podcast just on that guy alone. And then we get to the
Right.
NFC West, which is brutal because you don't know how good Greenlaw is going to be. You don't know if Trent Williams is staying, and
Yeah.
he started to decline towards the end of the year a little bit. Older guy, one of my favorite left tackles ever. I am going to pick the Rams to win the division.
Okay.
Stafford is fully healthy.
Bias.
Puka, yes, 100%. No, 100%.
I just
100%. No, I mean, it's fair. I like Brock Purdy, but there is now tape on him. Brandon, I will tell you this: I am considering Brandon Ayuk gone based off of his Instagram posts and his family's Instagram posts.
Was he angry or just looking for money?
He's looking for money, which this is his big year. It's a contract year too, and he was mad that they lost, and his family was mad that on social media that they lost, and the body language that he had. Some people read it like in the interview, post game interview, looked like he was ready to move on.
Okay.
But they have Juwan Jennings to step up too, and he had a hell of a game, and he's just a hell of a football player.
Played very well.
So the Rams, they have the young talent on offense, they have the old wizard, they have one of the best coaches, and the defense, they had 2 rookies on the defensive line with almost 10 sacks. The corners are getting better. I think that this is just a situation where the Rams are getting younger and cheaper. The Niners are getting older and more expensive. And here's the ugly part, and I don't like to say this, but if the Niners come out and they're bad next year, it shouldn't be a shocker because like losing the Super Bowl the way that they did to a team that already beat them with having gone all in and stretched the cap and all of that stuff, they might be emotionally spent. I don't think that's the case, but that is on the table.
No, that's a valid approach. Yeah.
And then you look at Seattle. I think they let Geno keep his injury thing, so I think that signals that he's their quarterback next year. He came down to earth a little bit this year. Look, Geno Smith is like a solid, like maybe he turns the ball over a little more than you want, but he also makes some splash plays too. He is like the 16th best quarterback, but he has enough talent to where you don't feel like you're out of some games with him. So it's hard to look at Seattle, who has a good defense and the line and the corners. It's going to be a tough division again. So I'm going to pick the Niners to get second, the Rams to get first. I feel bad for the Cardinals because if Murray's healthy back and they have, some draft capital, like they have a chance to not be a 4-win team. But they were really bad last year. Yeah. And if they didn't win some games that they probably didn't want to win long term, they really could be in a position to take some studs. So I got to go Rams, Niners, Seahawks, Cardinals.
Okay. Yeah. I think I got the Rams winning the division too. Shocker.
Bias. Secret bias.
But mainly because I still kind of believe in their coach. And so like whereas Shanahan, I'm kind of like starting to lose a little bit of faith there. Not much, but enough to say that, like, McVay is, the things that McVay was able to do this year when they
Yeah.
were really struggling, like that's really a testament to him because I
And
thought they were fucking
yeah, brother,
done.
you're right because they also people forget how injured that roster was the first third of the season. So like when
Right.
the Steelers beat them, it was a close game, and Stafford was looking better and better, and I was like, oh shit, they might go on a playoff run, like if things don't bottom out. And then you look
Right.
at their starters after like 2 weeks after the Steelers game, 3 weeks after the game, and there's a lot of different guys who are doing things. McVay is an A or B plus or an A, X's and O's guy.
Yeah.
Shanahan Jr. is an A plus plus, but there is something about McVay and the way that he connects with guys,
Mhm.
and the culture that he builds, the ability to bring in star players and get them to buy in, while also giving them a chance to show that they can still play and get a chance to get paid. Like Baker loves Sean McVay, and he credits
Yeah, well,
McVay with him getting
I can guarantee you that when he was there, Baker,
ready as a
that was
stock.
showcasing for the Tampa Bay Bucks because that showed the Bucks that, "Oh, Baker can still play."
Look, it's like, look, this is what happened in Carolina. The
Yeah.
Cleveland situation was weird. Like, yeah, no, 100%. And the fact that Baker was doing it with like basic reads and vanilla play calling because he hadn't been there very long also shows it's like, look, come on, this guy's not a scrub. You let him get in the system, he's
Right.
going to do some stuff. And I think for me, the big thing that the Rams also have that's going to help them, that San Francisco doesn't have, is
Mhm.
just they are now coming. They had cap hell with the Von Miller, the Jalen Ramsey, all that stuff. They got a decent return for Ramsey. Miller walked out the door.
Yep.
They reworked the Aaron Donald contract, which did strain the cap a little bit. But they had when Wagner signed there, he left after that 1 year post Super Bowl. So they have some cap flexibility, and I don't think that the Niners do. And how quickly Les Snead has been able to go from going all in and stretching the cap to getting it to be more reasonable. So it wouldn't be a shocker. I'll tell you this now. It would not be a shocker if come trade deadline, the Rams go out and to make a big free agent splash or a big trade midseason. It's a very LA Ram thing to do. So if they went out there and they grabbed a guy like a Hassan Riddick, let's say he stays with the Eagles and they're shopping him, right? Like in
Right.
the or something like that. A guy who can just come in, show up, play football, right? Like I don't have to do too much scheming for you.
Right.
That wouldn't be a shocker. I think the Niners can't do that 2 years in a row. Seattle, see if the
They got a
Niners
new coach. New
they do,
coach.
and if the Niners fall, if they stumble, I would not be shocked to see Seattle rise up and take their spot either. The other thing is, and here's the nasty part with the Niners too, because there's a lot of things that are working against them. Let's say they keep Ayuk. Okay. Debo gets dinged up. Trent Williams gets dinged up. Brock Purdy is a smaller quarterback. McCaffrey has an injury issue. Like, remember when I said, like, hey, I'm picking the Niners if they're healthy? If they're healthy is the big thing like that. They
Well,
could
that
be
was your
really good.
hesitancy picking
Yeah.
them at the beginning of the year because you said, "I don't think they can stay healthy," which they were
Healthy.
able to, but
Too. Yeah, and then they still lost, and that's the fucking kill. My homie that I watched the game with, he became a big Niners fan this year. He loves Christian McCaffrey. He took him in fantasy. He loves McCaffrey. He's a Kittle guy. Kittle has a big following in Chicago amongst Bears fans. My guy, is Illinois boy, so he does go for the Bears. But it's kind of like the thing where it's like you watch the Bears and then you watch the other team that's good that you like, so you can see football that doesn't make you sad and hate the game. You know what I mean? And so watching the Super Bowl, like when it was really dope to be able to watch it with him. But when we were watching it, when the Niners are kicking ass, it's like he was celebrating, but not celebrating too much. And when the Chiefs are coming back, I was celebrating because I'm a Mahomes guy, but not celebrating too much. And he had his clock was like 10 seconds ahead of mine. And so on that muffed punt, he goes, God damn it, they're going to score. They're going to score. He has good instincts for the game already. He's like, they're going to fucking score. They're going to fucking score. And then, God damn it. And I'm just like, Mahomes touchdown to the middle of the end zone. He goes, yep. And it's I think that those moments stay with a team all through the offseason. And that could propel the Niners or it could diminish them. Personally, I think they have a lot of dogs on that team. I do expect them to be back. And I could actually easily talk myself into saying that they win the division again. But right now, Rams, prisoner of the moment, Rams. Rams Steelers Super Bowl. You hear it here first.
I don't know about all that, but definitely Rams win division. Still the Niners second. I still put Seattle third, but that's really kind of like it could go either way with Arizona and Seattle.
Kyler Murray is not bad at football.
No, but at the same time, they got a lot of other problems going on there, and they also have another coach. So it's
the
like,
rest of the roster.
yeah. So you're looking at two behemoths above you, and it's like I don't know if we can get past those two teams. They're not very good in the division. So really, the only switcheroo here for me is the Rams. I think will come back strong. A lot of credit to McVay, the way that he handles that team, and I do think that the Niners, there is this like Super Bowl hangover that happens whether you win it or lose it, and so when you lose it, getting back there is a really tough road. So I don't think
and that's why one of the reasons I like Shanahan so much is one of my favorite coaches is Andy Reid. And when he was in Philadelphia, I was the Andy Reid truther. I was like, no, this guy is awesome. He's not he has some issues. Like he can do some things better, but he is one of the reasons why you're here, not one of the reasons why you're not going further. And Shanahan is like Reid's on steroids because he's not losing the NFC Championship game and getting the one Super Bowl before he's out the door. He's getting the Super Bowls. And where Andy Reid was losing to like the Tampa Bucks, who didn't have a good quarterback, but they had that stifling defense, and then the Patriots in the Super Bowl, Shanahan Jr. is running into the same thing, but this time it's Kansas City. And here's the bitch of it. You know how we talk about like there are quarterbacks who are Hall of Famers or players, it doesn't have to just be quarterbacks, who have rings, and other guys, are better than them, but they're ringless. There are head coaches in the NFL Hall of Fame who don't have a ring, who I would swear to you up and down are better than some coaches who do. And life isn't fair, and you can't control who you play against, and a lot of things are outside of your control.
Yeah.
I have seen times where the NFL makes no sense. I know there's parity and stuff like that, but it's just like the year the Saints won the Super Bowl. Every fucking ball bounced their fucking way, and it carried them to the playoffs. Like in the next year, like what a shock that defense just wasn't nearly as good because the defense was bad. They had a bad defense. They just forced a lot of turnovers, and they couldn't do it again. And that doesn't speak to what happened to the Niners, but it does speak to the fact that football is the ultimate shit happens. You have offense. On offense, you have 11 starters. In basketball, both teams make a total of 10 dudes. That's one less than just one side of the ball. Football's so brutal. Baseball has a lot of players on the field, but most of the time it's just the catcher and the pitcher versus the batter. The vast majority of the time in the game. That's what makes football so beautiful. That's what makes it so frustrating. And I can't. If the Niners got rid of Kyle Shanahan, I would be convinced it would be like when they got rid of Harbaugh. And now they got rid of Harbaugh because there was a power struggle, and then they sucked for a while. That roster was getting worse, and Harbaugh wasn't positioned to get the same results that he had gotten. But Shanahan is so integral to what that team does. And I feel like we are undervaluing. It's weird to bash a guy for losing to a dude who's in the GOAT conversation, even though he's still in his prime, and then ignore what the Niners were before him. And yes, it did take 2 years to turn around. I get that. But he was starting Mullins and Bethard or whatever his name is. And right. I don't want to pile on too much on that guy because gun to my head, I can't pick 5 coaches better than him. And arguably I couldn't pick 3 coaches better than him coaching today. Obviously all time, that's not the case. I still believe in Shanahan. I just think that he would have really loved to have had another crack at Lamar and not run into the Kansas City Mahomes.
Yeah. And it's funny you bring up, just how different things play out, parody or otherwise. Like, I think back to those first couple of years where Denver had to go through Cleveland, to get to the Super Bowl, and the one was the fumble and one was the drive.
Yeah.
If neither one of those things happen, just think about how much that changes the Browns' legacy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
If the Bengal doesn't drop the pick from Montana, the Tracy Porter drops interception from Peyton Manning, Vinatieri misses 2 kicks, Wes Welker doesn't drop the ball, the David Tyree catch doesn't fucking happen.
So much shit.
It's so much random shit. If you told David Tyree to go out there and make that catch, you have 100 chances in a row. It's not happening. And football is just brutal. That's why I try to not get caught up so much.
Or even another papa when McNair gets his arm over that goal line. There's so much.
Yeah, the Music City Miracle. Was it a this or that? Some people got really frustrated with the tuck rule thing, and I didn't, because I was like, oh, so the rule is bad, but they followed the rule because that's the rule. I've always been wired like that. You know what I mean? I'm like, yes, this is a weird rule.
I mean, look, I didn't even know about the rule at the time, but obviously, as I don't like the Raiders, I was like,
right,
celebrating.
You're happy with it.
But part of me would have still felt bad. I mean, look, I could sit here all day and say I think Brady was going to try to throw that pass. I think it was a fumble, but
he didn't get to the point to do it. So that's
right.
what counts. And that's what's crazy.
And I can't change the rule.
No, you can't.
But I do think it was a fumble, and I do think the Raiders got robbed. But I'm going to tell you straight up, I don't give a fuck. I don't care.
I think he was going to try to throw the ball, but when he got hit, it was not in the act of throwing as defined by the rules.
Correct.
And that's the bitch of it. It's like, well, that's ticky tacky. It is, but your rules have to define. And if you disagree there, then you don't get to be mad at the 10-year stretch where no one knew what a catch was. Is that a catch?
We know for a fact too that had that been the Raiders in that position, they would have taken that and said, "Oh, I don't care."
Exactly.
It might be,
exactly.
It's just how it is.
Yeah, it is. No, that's exactly how it is. And the thing of it too is, I could sit there when I was talking about that stupid taunting penalty that the Bears got hit with, right, with the guy doing the karate celebration. I was like, that is an embarrassingly wrong call. That guy should be forced to apologize to every last Chicago Bear in the locker room. And he should feel bad about himself. But I don't give a shit. Give me the 15 yards, baby. I will keep that drive alive. I'm trying to get the dubs because it's going to happen to us.
All right.
The amount of times where a Steeler gets hit with a 15-yard penalty off of reputation, even when it's not actually a penalty, it happens. These are things that you have to overcome. And look, sometimes it hurts more than other times. And it's okay to say it made an impact. But it's very rare to say that's what decided the game. And it's like I went back and forth with people on the Broncos board. I said, so we did not like as a whole the call against the Eagles in the Super Bowl at the end of the game.
All right.
Yeah. We can agree it's a penalty. And I fought with some people, but it's like, no, guys, here's the rule. Here's the play. Here's him admitting that he cheated. It is a penalty. I'm not arguing that. That is silly. Okay. If you don't like this ticky-tack thing, you cannot then cheer. You can cheer for whatever you want because it makes you happy. But then you can't be mad if somebody takes umbrage with that. That's why I've always just tried to be consistent about it, so I always don't have to go around. Now, in the heat of the moment, the Steelers always get robbed. We never got a good call going our way.
Yeah, you don't have to like it.
Yeah, you don't have to like it. And in the moment, you're watching with all the adrenaline, you're just like, fuck.
But I often say this during the college football season. It's like, when people start pointing to non-calls or calls, I look, your team was 21-point favorites. If you don't win by 21 points, this is a non-issue. If you can't do it, it's not the other team's fault. You've left them in the game. Even with the Eagles and Chiefs, even if it's a penalty, it's if you're the Eagles, dude, you were up 20 to 3 or 7 at one point in that game. It's you allowed
Jalen Hurts played a really good game, but that fumble happened.
Yep. And so that's just how it is, man. You either put that game away and make it a non-issue and don't make the refs have to make a call that might change the outcome,
And I
Then
think, yeah, and here's the other thing with that call specifically. They were getting killed by those routes. And Kansas City they were in the refs' ear saying, look, watch, they're holding us on this because they can't cover it. And the replays validated that. So the refs were looking for it, and then they saw it. So if you let's go the other way in this Super Bowl. Let's say they called holding on the Chiefs a lot, and the Chiefs are like, well, what the fuck? We haven't called holding like that all playoffs. And it's like, okay, that's true. On the flip side, y'all suck, so you hold a lot. The refs saw it, they called it, they were alerted to it by it. Like, it goes the other way. I mean, here's a thing. Don't rely on not getting called on a penalty to win. Like the Eagle defender, he was like, yeah, they caught me. It was a subtle move. I thought I was going to get away with it. They caught me. And it just is what it is. And I think the frustration for the fans in the heat of the moment, you don't even have to fucking like it. Like, you could be a Niners fan and walk away going, those holding calls were blatant and they should have been called. And that's not wrong either. Like, there's a lot of truth to that. On the flip side, maybe you should learn the hold too. Like, or we don't know how many calls you got away with as well.
right.
And it goes that way too. So I get the frustration, but it would have to be something truly special. And you would have had to have played a really clean game, up until that point for me to go, yeah. Now, I have seen that. I don't know if you were on the board at the time. I think it was a bowl game. It was late in the season. This is like 4 years ago. LSU, they were like in double overtime or something. And there was a crazy college football game. And there was this curmudgeon-y, crockety, old, fucking kind of a dickhead old ref. And he called a really bad taunting play, and I think it reset everything. And there, it's like you have this wild college game, and the penalties have been fair, and now a guy is throwing a flag because he doesn't like a celebration, is how it came off to a lot of people. That is a little bit different, especially when it's like, okay, now you get a new set of downs in college overtime.
Right.
But at the end of the day, just make the plays, and
Yep.
it is what it is. So
what
do
do
you have
you think
oh, go ahead.
about? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, do you have a MVP candidate off the top of your head for next
For
year?
the Super Bowl or next
No,
year?
just like who you think like it has a good shot of winning it.
Oh, I can't. Probably Mahomes, man. Like, I don't really see. I mean,
It's a good
like,
pick.
you can debate Lamar. I mean, he won it, but
It's hard to be
yeah,
MVP 2 years in a row. Like, that's not a thing.
it
That
is. But
happens a
like,
lot.
it's the old saying, man. In order to beat a man, you got to beat the man. Mahomes is just that good. That's why he's number 2 on my all-time list now. It's like, I can't deny it. I hate the Chiefs, but I can't fucking deny it. Kermit is fucking number 2. I can't deny it. Cannot deny it. Yes.
I have a spicy
This little
one.
fucking bitch of a little green dude.
Exact likeness. That's obviously him. I have a spicy one for you. I think you'll like it because it's bold. It's bold.
Okay.
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Is that
That's the Lions running back after Montgomery.
Oh, okay.
I think they're going
Really?
to scale Montgomery back because they're moving towards Gibbs. Obviously, they drafted him where they drafted him.
Well, you remember though when we were talking about it was during the draft. You and I were like, they passed on Robinson. And so it's like we kept saying, like, why would you do that? And Robinson had a good year. But I think in hindsight, I think we both agree that I think Detroit just saw it as, this guy fits our system. He fits what we want to do.
He does. I think here's the thing too. Robinson had like 1,400 all-purpose yards, and Arthur Smith got fired because he didn't use him enough. So I still do maintain that Robinson is the better player.
No, I agree.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm not. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but sometimes like, well, it's like, okay, that draft with Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
He was not the number 1 overall pick, but no one sits there and goes, "Oh, the Rockets were so dumb for drafting Akeem Olajuwon." Right? It's like, I don't know. They drafted the guy who looked like he was the best college player, and he won 2 championships and the MVP, and he's the best defensive player I've ever seen. Sometimes like you miss, but you don't miss, right? I think for me, one thing that we got right about their draft was It wasn't optimized, but it was still good, but it could have been better. Now, I won't lie to you, that middle linebacker that they took, that pick might not age very well.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
obviously,
the
you hit or
one.
miss with a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Gibbs, and we were both like, he's good. And,
But I think we were thinking about that. We're like, dude, this team needs defense like a bad habit, but they weren't really picking the players.
Their big defensive pick was Branch, that safety. And that guy is going to be, I don't know. I'm going to stop short of saying he's going to be special, but he's going to be a Pro Bowler. I'm not going to, when I say special, I say safety, you think Palomalu, Reed, like Bob Sanders DPOY year, right? That's a high bar. Earl Thomas, that, Barry when he was healthy, that's a wild thing to try to hoist upon somebody. But with Gibbs, I think you're going to see Montgomery take a smaller role. I think they're going to run the ball more. Yeah, my man.
What are you doing?
Baby Neko.
Yeah.
Being a cat. Doing cat stuff.
Oh my God.
Doing cat stuff. Gibbs is going to take a more dominant role. And I think that I don't think that the Lions are going to be less aggressive, but I do think they are going to use the running backs a little bit more. What a gorgeous cat that is, by the way. And if it's not Gibbs, you're a hat now.
Yeah.
If it's not Gibbs, here's another spicy one for you. CJ Stroud.
Yeah, no, I was going to go back to that because I think after I thought about it, I was like, Stroud might, if he repeats what he did this year, he'll probably be better. So you could have argued he could have had it this year, really, considering everything.
Yeah, I thought
nobody
that
had Houston winning that division.
No, exactly. And I think that they do what college football does sometimes. They're like, you're a rookie or you're a freshman, so you can't get Heisman or MVP. I think it's silly. It's you either.
And the
are
funny thing is,
like,
you and I talked about this at length because we talked about defensive player of the year with Max Crosby versus everyone else.
Yeah.
To me, a most valuable player is somebody who stands out the most and has the biggest impact. I'm not really arguing Lamar doesn't make a big impact for Baltimore, but I think we can agree that this year Stroud was like the most important piece of that team. So you have Stroud or you have Case Keenum. Where do you want to go with this? Like, it's like that's night and day.
And the thing too with Baltimore, and to me, when I think MVP, the guy that comes to mind, it's more of the guy whose team sucks and he's just dragging them than the guy who's really good and he's on a loaded team with the best record.
Right.
And Lamar definitely elevates the running game. And, he if you look at some of his advanced numbers, he was definitely playing big boy quarterback. And I like that. Actually, I was kind of really more disappointed by some of his rushing production, to be quite frank, because the threat's always there.
Yeah, but we kind of figured as his career goes on that's going to go away. Same with Mahomes. Eventually, he's not going to be able to do.
He's going to have to transition into using his mobility like a Young or a Elway. But here's the good thing: since that he ran a lot more before that knee injury, and now they're just like that's the secret weapon, and what a secret weapon it is. I think here's the thing with Stroud that what makes me like his chances. One, that division, it might not be horrible, but it's not exactly the strongest division either. Right?
No, he's probably smiling like, I like this division.
Yeah, I like this division. It's fun. He has good weapons, but he has good weapons that we don't really know. Like, I'm a Tank Dell guy, and him breaking his leg was just brutal. And his team had some injuries, and it's not like some of those guys could end up being all pro studs. Like, they're developing, they're really young, but it's not like he's throwing the ball to a Tyreek Hill or a Jamar Chase or Jefferson, where they're established as if you make a top 5 list and our name's not on it, your list is very silly and you should feel bad. And as those guys might actually already be really good, and we just might not know it yet. And that's a little secret thing. But the other thing that he has in his pocket is we are conditioned already to see him as a big time player and a winner. And he is that, but the story also helps drive that. And voters love narratives. Facts, they come and they go, but narratives, they are eternal, at least for that football season. So,
yeah. Well, let's do this because we're gonna shift gears, I think, a little bit. So, how about March 7th? We start preparing for March Madness. How do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, my Kentucky Wildcats can break my heart again. That sounds great. The tradition begins or
So, yeah, I
continues.
think we can start doing a little bit of that. Maybe do one during March Madness, maybe after the first round, where we'll kind of figure it out. But and then, of course, April we'll start preparing for the NFL draft and have our shit ready to go
We
then.
we might have to do a couple episodes where we do some mock drafts
Hmm.
and show them off and talk. Now the hard thing is, and this is what people get on our case for, not just us, but the draftniks, is one trade, just one trade in the first round can change everything.
Right.
So trying to project trades is insane. Like,
That's why
I
you
don't
kind of
know.
just have to go with what's what's
I just
projected.
go with what the order is, and then
Yeah.
sometimes if there's a big trade that looks like it's really imminent, I might do one where it's like this is with that trade, this is without that trade. But by and
Right.
large,
Well,
I
I
will
think
say,
it's fair. So, like, if you use like fan speak, like I do, like you can
yeah, that's
actually
the one I
you
use.
can
Yeah,
say, "Hey, on this particular mock, I went and I actually said, okay, Denver doesn't have a lot of draft picks, so we're going to try to trade and work a deal out. So I might do that. You might do that with the Steelers mock or whatever, but that's fair. Like that's something that's fair to do. But usually I try to stay close to what we have. But it's going to be a real problem for me because we just don't have much draft capital to work with.
how much do you actually? I'm going to pull up fan speak right now. I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see something about the Broncos. Give me
No, that's good.
All right, so I got. All right, so I'm picking Denver. Doesn't really matter what my settings are. I'll just well, there's starting a lot of mock drafts are starting to pour in.
Oh yeah, of course they are.
Okay, so you have the 12th pick in the first, 12th pick in the third, the 13th pick in the fourth, the fifth pick and the 10th pick in the fifth, the 12th in the fifth, and the 31st in the sixth. So you have some picks to trade. If you're going to make a big trade, you don't have the option of doing the thing where you pay the brunt of the price the year that you're making the trade.
Right.
And that is actually what you did with Russ. Like you paid off a big chunk of what you owed for the Russ, in that up for the upcoming year. Actually, it's what I said.
Right.
What I said was sort of right. It was wrong, but it was sort of right. Fuck
Right.
me. So yeah, no. At the end of the day, I know what you're saying. I think it's hard for me to believe you come back with Russ, and it's hard for me to believe that you have Stidham. I think Penix, Bo Nix, or McCarthy will be your starting quarterback next year.
Yeah. I'm just I'm not crazy about McCarthy, but anything can
I need to
happen.
see his combine.
Yeah, like there's a lot of work that's got to be done there to impress me, but I wasn't that opposed to Penix. I mean, I thought he did okay. I mean,
It's the health
y-
thing really more than anything else for him.
that plus, look, I mean, Michigan was just a monster. Like they just really
Yeah.
dominated everything. So,
How do you feel about Jaden Daniels?
who's he quarterback for?
He was LSU's guy.
Oh, I didn't see much on him. I had to go and check him out. I mean, I did like Caleb, but it's like
You're
that's
not.
really a reach. You have to
Yeah.
move away a
Only
long
team
way to
that's
get there.
really I think that Caleb, if he isn't taken by the Bears, it's because the Commanders give everything to get him.
Now, in this case, if I'm Sean, if Chicago's asking for a second for Fields, I'm like, I'm gonna give you my 12. I'll take Fields. Give him to me.
Yeah.
I'd like legit do that. Like I know some people would hate that, but I'm like, dude, that kid still has some promise, and like I would
And
totally do it
yeah. Well, the other thing too is like you can
because he already
hold some
has
of this.
experience too. So like instead of risking Penix, who may just flame out right off the bat, you can take Fields, who actually has been battle tested and knows how to play. So
Yeah, and you can't doubt his toughness. Like Lord knows he's physically tough.
right,
Then you have the fifth year option is a gift and a curse because if he plays well but he doesn't play great, You're like, if he goes out there and he throws 30 touchdowns, 12 picks and runs for a bunch and makes plays, you're like, whatever, I'll give you the contract. And if this just doesn't work out, then we just, whatever, I'll roll the dice. But if he has
Right.
that year where it's like 24 touchdowns, 13 picks, but some plays in the running game and some special stuff. Hey, kitty. Then you're like, oh God, I still have to do this, but it's a tough situation. I think with Fields, where I feel vindicated about defending him is he brought a spotlight to just how rough it is to be a quarterback in Chicago, to the point where people who didn't even like him coming out of the draft are like, I don't know if he's bad or not. Like I could not possibly evaluate a quarterback
Right.
based off of what they did there. And here's the other thing too, for Denver, y'all probably won't have a great line next year. And Fields can operate, you know what I mean, in that situation. You'll have a better line than what he had in Chicago, because it's hard to get much worse than that.
Yeah, it's all about, whatever off-season moves we make. Obviously, we
Yeah.
can't pay a lot for a lineman, but if we can find somebody who's a lot more serviceable than what we got going on. Plus, I don't know. I think we have to really find like a better offensive line coach. Like we just need to find somebody who can scheme better. Like, you look at again, we go back to the Chiefs and how they adjusted during the playoffs. Like Reed saw that they needed to get better protection from Mahomes, so they put in 3 tight end alignments. Like that's what you got to do. You got to be able to re-scheme some things.
And then you have the players with the ability to operate in that system and still get open with the tight ends and the quarterback who can do that. And I'm not comparing Fields talent-wise to Mahomes, but the arm is live, the mobility is live. He can throw touch passes. From terms of like just physical, like, can he make this play? Can he run this? Can he do this? The answer is yes, and that's not always been the case. Like the Case Keenum year is one of the worst years I've ever suffered as a fan, because it's like you and I knew that boy was ass, and we knew it was a throwaway year, but the hopium and the copium, and it's just like, we threw a 50-yard bomb to Demaryius Thomas. It's like, yeah, because Demaryius Thomas is awesome. That's why he did it. It was a shitty throw, and but he couldn't do some certain things. The same thing with Simeon. Or with Simeon, like he can make every throw on the field. Yes, if the pocket is perfect and he can plant his feet, and then there's no wind, and it's the 3rd Sunday in November, and he had 3 pieces of French toast. Like he needed everything to line up for him. And with certain guys, it's not that thing. I hope y'all get the quarterback. The football is better when Denver is good. It also makes these podcasts like. Sometimes I just feel bad because like there's so much like sadness like on the board. Like watching people realize.
Well, I mean, look, you and I talked about it. The AFC West is going to get harder, not easier.
Yeah,
so we have to do something. Sean's going to have to make some moves, and it's going to, even if we're going young, we got to find somebody who's going to be able to light that offense on fire a little bit. And
he's not going to. Yeah, no, you're right, because the clock is ticking. This was his mulligan year. No matter what happens this next season, he's not going to get fired. But the Walmarts will spend money on coaches. So if in year 3 there's not something majorly moving, he's not going to be there, and then the carousel continues again. And I just don't want. I saw a meme and it hurt my heart. I didn't share it with you because I didn't want you to get mad at me. I was like, oh, he's going to hit me.
No, I wouldn't get mad.
They showed a bunch of like Denver since the playoff, since the Super Bowl.
Right.
And they're like, is Denver becoming the new Cleveland? And with the coaches and the quarterbacks and stuff, I don't think it'll be that bad, because there's a couple of, like, I don't see Denver doing the thing where like they're like looking at Johnny Manziel and they're like,
no,
Daddy.
I mean,
Daddy
look, it's not that Russell was like a bad guy to look at. It's just that the price tag that came with it was just far more than we ever had to pay for Peyton. Like you had to be smart about it, and we weren't. And that's really what bit us in the ass. So it's not that it was a wrong thing to look at another vet like him, because why not?
Absolutely not, because your roster was good and you didn't like. I think the biggest thing that went sideways for Denver, and I can't fault them for one of them, the Josh Allen thing happened, but Josh was not good as a rookie, and it took a lot for him to turn to the stud. And you could even ask, would we have developed him? Like, yeah, he might have had the work ethic to do it, but would we have been able to give him that same
Because
support?
Buffalo was smart. Buffalo spent 3 years, same people, same everything,
Right.
same system, and they got him where he needed to be.
Exactly. And then they did things to help him on offense. And then the other thing is the Herbert one hurt. I thought Herbert coming out of college, like I loved him, like his stud year, then he had that regression year. And my stance was he's so talented, I can't blame a team for taking him. And if that was my team, I wouldn't hate it. But I have really bad doubts. And then like obviously, like maybe he won't be an elite top 3 guy like we thought he might be, but he's obviously a top 10, closer to 5 than 10 type of guy. And so for Denver to have missed on those dudes, and as Jaded loves to point out, they won some meaningless games, and that's why Herbert wasn't there, and Herbert was an Elway guy. And I think for me, I just want Denver to get to the point where they have a real talent there. I don't know if it'll work out, but they have a real talent there, and they're really building towards him. Because when Mahomes was drafted, I was like, oh, he's shot up the board. I haven't seen much of his tape. Last I checked, he was going to be
anything about
him. Well, Shannon Sharp loves him, and Shannon Sharp was like, he's not going to be good. And so that should tell you.
I was like, I laughed. I was like, wait a minute, who'd they take? Like,
yeah,
I literally laughed thinking they were just bombed out, and then jokes on me.
And you have Sean Payton wanted to trade up. He got beat out for Mahomes. So here's my optimism, and I said it on the board, even though I'm a bit of an internet break. You have a guy who has an eye for quarterback talent. He saw it with Brees, who was an atypical player. He saw it in Mahomes, and he won in Mahomes. So, even if you take a guy in the 5th rounder, I'd have at least some slight optimism. But if Lamar in Baltimore and Mahomes in Kansas City, immensely talented guys, good organizations that did the right stuff around him. Say whatever you want, Baltimore fans, about Greg Roman and how that held him back. It might have held him back on that last year he was there, but that system is what lifted Lamar up, and that system let Lamar do the things that he was good at. It helped develop him as a passer and helped do some of the things he was good at as a passer as well.
The thing is, even if you don't even care about Roman, like the fact that they abandoned the run so much in that game against the Chiefs,
it didn't make any sense. The Chiefs' weakness is the run defense, and that's why people are banging on Shanahan. And on top of that, with Lamar running the ball with your running back, when you have Lamar, even if they're not doing well, is still horrifying because the option exists there. It's like the Lamar Jackson, like the rules that you have to play with, the disciplines that you have to play with when he's on the field. It's game warping. And my thing of it is that if I was still a Denver fan, and I always have a place in my heart for them, I would not be completely downtrodden because you do have that type of coach, even though he's an asshole, even though Nathaniel Hackett is his daddy, at least to the next year.
He is right now.
He is right now, temporary daddy. He sees quarterbacks the right way, and he will do the things to develop them. So it is better than the Fangio stuff. You got anything else, my man? I feel like we've done a pretty good job covering
it. We've covered it.
I think it's covered it like Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
Covered it like champ.
All right. Yeah, no, I think we should just shoot for the 7th. We'll get prepared for March Madness.
Gotcha.
And then we'll also start working on mocks. I'll probably start digging into that, but I got to look at players and start researching a little bit, seeing who I like, who I don't like. And you got anything else coming up with you at all, or?
I got the book cover for my book done. I'm looking for a copy editor to have a pro go through it. And then at that point, it's just, I hate to say this, these are scary words, but I got to make the TikTok and the Instagram account, promote my books, promote
promote it here for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. It means the world to me. And then it's just off to the races, man. We'll just see where it goes. We're going to have at least one book out this year. Technically, it's a novella, but, it's coming out this year. I won't talk about it like too much because I feel like I almost curse it, but it's close. It's close, man. The post-legal career life is crazy, mostly in a good way. Still doing my actual plays, the Call of Cthulhu stuff. I'm probably going to run a Call of Cthulhu game on Start Playing too. It's a horror-based game. And we talked about it on the gaming podcast that we did a little bit. And I'm slowly expanding my horizons, and it feels like I'm building something. And man, I'm the happiest I've been since about 2012, 2013. So I'm doing well. Down almost 50 pounds. My heaviest I was at
Hey,
about
good job, brother.
385, 390, and I'm just at like 340 to 345. My goal in the next 2 years is to be down below $3 bills, and that's when I was my happiest. And as long as I'm there, and my doctors say that I don't have the gout or like fucking sugar diabetes or whatever, then I'll be happy. So I'm just building towards a better life, and you know what? I'm blessed right now. I didn't know my life was going to look like this, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. But I need you here to do this with me, so definitely
absolutely.
get healthier.
It's a progress, man. Let me tell you something. The temptations for the holidays and all the sweets. And,
oh God,
my God! Like I did really well. I stopped losing weight, but I didn't gain any weight. Actually, I think I lost a pound, but it was hard. Like
there's no way to get through Thanksgiving without like getting some weight.
Halloween hit. I was at CVS picking up prescription, and I see all that discounted candy, and I'm like, oh Jesus, like my fat man thing. Like, I was shaking, man. It's like I had the sweats. People are, are you stressed? No, I want a Snickers, a bag of them.
Snickers really satisfies.
Yeah,
let's see. For us, tomorrow, Neko and I are doing another global unscripted. We talk a little bit about the Sunny Hostin thing with her ancestry, as well as Vosh, political streamer, who's a bit hot water with some CP issues. Yeah. And then we might have Mr. Tony the Dead joining us, so that would be kind of cool. Really? Yeah. Well, I think we're doing it at 7 p.m. Eastern. So, and if this guy here is available and wants to chat and react to some of that stuff, he's welcome as well. So
I'll let
a bit more of the politics and social stuff. Yeah, something like that.
Oh,
yeah, it's crazy shit. Let me tell you, it gets worse and worse.
There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in politics right now.
Mr. Poet, thank you for joining me tonight.
Hey,
it's always fun doing this with you.
Absolutely.
For those that are enjoying this podcast, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. Leave us some comments about your thoughts of the Super Bowl.
Yeah, tell me how fucking wrong I am and that Mahomes is a scrub. Talk about my man tits too. I don't give a fuck.
I don't know how they're going to point out Mahomes is a scrub. I just don't see how that's going to happen.
But
anyway,
delusions.
Yeah. Thank you all for checking us out tonight. We will see you next time here on the Meltdown Radio podcast. We are out of here.